Rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times.
Star Wars #1!
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Well, we hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Hope you enjoyed the holiday and are in the holiday spirit. Yeah, Thanksgiving. Last week, took some time off, or as our listeners outside the U.S. call it, Thursday. But we call it Thanksgiving here. I was just totally grunge pretty much all weekend. I didn't really do much of anything. Maybe shopped around for some deals, picked up a few things here and there online, but yeah, I was grunge. Just laid around in the PJs on Black Friday. Wasn't going to go out to those stores and do all that crazy shopping. I know that's a big tradition for a lot of people, so not knocking it, but it's definitely not my cup of tea. But what is my cup of tea is keeping up with Star Wars news, and there was big news that broke over the holiday. With the strike ending, now all of these creatives can talk about their works. You got Dave Filoni back out there. He's talking about Ahsoka. And big news with Dave as he gets a promotion. We'll be talking about all of that. Fear not. I know that there were a lot of people out there saying, well, what does Rebel Force Radio think about this Filoni news? The official Rebel Force Radio Facebook group was all abuzz about it. And so we'll be breaking down that for you, as well as welcoming a couple of folks into the cantina later on. We've got our old buddy Kyle Newman. He's going to be in along with the co-director of the Disturbance in the Force documentary that is coming out in the early part of December for home video release. That's all about the making of the holiday special. We've talked to Steve Kozak. We've talked to Kyle about this documentary. But the first time we've got co-director Jeremy Coon joining us as well in the cantina to talk about that. So it's a great conversation. You don't want to miss it as we return here to Rebel Force Radio, your source for the Force, and oh, so much more. If you're new to the program and introductions are in order, my name is Jason, and with me, as always, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Yeah, we're back. Took a week off, but like you said, Jason, there was a lot of things building. There was a disturbance in the Force for sure. And that screening happened just this past week at Alamo Draft Houses across the country, where the new Star Wars holiday special documentary, A Disturbance in the Force, was screened. And we went to the Chicago screening last night, Tyler Page and myself. And we just had a good old time. There was a lot of great stuff in the holiday special. Our buddy Kyle Newman appears on screen as a talking head throughout the entire thing. There's great list of guests on this documentary. You have Bobcat Goldthwait, Seth Green, Bonnie Burton, the great Steve Sansweet. Jason just put a shot here of Steve appearing in the documentary. I was taking photos of the screen like such a nerd. But there I was, hopefully not disturbing my fellow moviegoers as I was freaking out about seeing some of my friends on screen. Oh, here Jason just put up a blurry photo I snapped at the end where Rebel Force Radio does get
you can make
a
it
thank
out.
you.
Jimmy Mack was on a treadmill at the time that this was taken.
But as you can see, Rebel Force Radio received some credit for providing archival footage of our Charlie Lippincott interview, which was conducted back in 2013, and it's set up on the silver screen, Rebel Force Radio interview. Yeah,
that's
Charlie
so cool.
Lippincott.
That's so
pretty cool. Pretty
yeah.
cool. I felt pretty happy about that, and Of course, we've been working with Steve Kozak throughout the entire process of this film being developed. And then, as the Force would have it, our buddy Kyle Newman got recruited to work on it. And he was a producer as well as appearing in the film. And it was just great. A Disturbance in the Force, how the holiday special happened. It should be, why did it happen? There's great quotes throughout the entire thing, too. I scribbled down a few things. The holiday special is like Citizen Kane compared to Donnie and Marie, said somebody in there.
Wow.
Yeah, because the Donnie Marie holiday special, their Star Wars special gets featured in this too, complete with an interview with Donnie and great footage from that special.
But that wasn't just a one-timer. Donnie and Marie had a show, right? I mean, they had a weekly.
Oh, yeah. Well, they had a regular show. It was on every Friday night. Me and Billy Mack watched it every Friday night.
No kidding.
Then we went in the backyard and reenacted the entire show after it wrapped up. That's how we rolled in the 70s.
Who was Donnie and who was Marie?
I was Donnie. Marie was our neighbor Elena, who would always watch the episodes with us. And Billy was like a combination of all the Osmond brothers. So whoever, if we needed Wayne or Merle or whoever, Jimmy, we would call on Billy, and so he was very versatile.
He was your utility player. He could do them all.
Yeah, at times he was our Paul Lynn.
Oh my goodness.
And Paul does appear in the Donnie and Marie Star Wars. It's wild. They even show a clip from the Paul Lynn variety show from the 70s.
Yeah, I have a memory of him in a Imperial officer's uniform, right?
Yeah, he was like the Tarkin.
Yeah, like he was Grand Moff Tarkin.
He was the Tarkin. Of course, Chris Christopherson was the Han Solo. So there's some great footage from that. And Donnie reveals that it was his brothers in the Stormtrooper armor dancing around on stage and stuff. And according to Donnie, that was the coolest moment ever for the Osmond brothers. When they appeared as Stormtroopers.
I can imagine. I mean, this was at a time when you didn't go to conventions, you didn't know 501st members. So if you were a fan, and these, the Osmonds, they were kids like anybody else in some ways, and you go to the theater, Star Wars blows your mind, and then a few months later, you're dancing around wearing Stormtrooper armor. I mean, what a kick that must have been.
I mean, really amazing. And also the fact that these guys are pulling off some pretty good dance choreography on stage, under the bright lights and everything, in Stormtrooper armor. I think that takes a specific talent to be able to pull that off. So hats off to the Osmond boys. But we had a great time at the Alamo. We had buckets off. We had a great time at the Alamo Draft House before the documentary rolled. They were screening all of these great Star Wars videos, like the C-3PO cereal commercial or the Underoos commercial. Imagine seeing the Underoos commercial on a giant silver screen.
So they had they were running a reel of vintage commercials before.
Yeah, and they also showed other things like. There was these wacky edit videos where they would have Gilbert Gottfried's voice in Yoda scenes, It'd be like Gilbert dubbing Yoda. They showed that Seagulls video that came out a few years ago. They showed a video. It was Macho Man Savage, Randy Macho Man Savage, and Darth Vader. Wookiees who sound like Pee Wee Herman was one of the videos. I'm sure you could see all this crap on YouTube. I'm pretty sure that's where they took it all from. But it was a lot of fun. It added to the whole vibe of the evening, and it's just such a great documentary. Of course, Rebel Force Radio, as I said, featured in the documentary, our interview with Charlie Lippincott. J.W. Rinsler appears. It's great to see Jonathan again. May he rest in peace. And also, talking about the Donnie and Marie thing, I thought it was really interesting where it was very strategic for Lucasfilm to sign off on something like the Donnie and Marie show. It even surprised Donnie that Lucasfilm said okay to that schlock. But they did because it was really important as Star Wars would get re-released summer after summer that there would be hype for it in the form of like a variety show, like the Donnie and Marie show, promoting it. And it actually did drive people to the box office, according to Donnie Osmond. I'd say as a kid, I didn't need Donnie and Marie to tell me to go see Star Wars. I'll tell you that right now.
Was Donnie trying to take credit for the longevity of Star Wars in those early days?
I think he was patting himself on the back a little bit. Real interesting stories, revelations galore in this documentary. Things I never heard about the Star Wars Holiday Special. There was a script that was found at Ralph McQuarrie's house after he passed away for the Holiday Special that may have been written by George Lucas, with all kind of Wookiee Life Day background and casting suggestions and all of that. There were other choices. There was one very famous choice to do the singing number as opposed to it being Diane Carroll. They wanted somebody who, like a real superstar. We'll talk to the guys, Kyle and Jeremy, about some of these questions I have about the documentary. Patton Oswalt's in it. And Patton is legendary for hating on the Star Wars prequels.
Oh, yes.
Well, he claims that the Star Wars Holiday Special kind of primed those pumps a little bit,
Is that right?
So it's great. It's great. Yeah, and he's featured throughout. Weird Al Yankovic, Bobcat Goldthwait, just so many great people and some friends of the show. Like I said, Bonnie Burton, Kyle Newman, J.W. Rinsler, Steve Sansweet. Yeah, friends of us here at RFR. So it's really going to be worth checking out. It's going to be available for streaming starting in December. And we'll get you all hyped up for it later in the show, as Kyle Newman, producer, and director Jeremy Coon will be joining us to talk all about A Disturbance in the Force.
You don't know Star Wars. This special is really for the true fans.
So the true fan wants to watch Dorothy from the Golden Girls flirt with an alien.
Okay, I admit it was an odd choice to have B. Arthur manage the cantina. Let's just move on.
You must contact me.
Play back the entire message.
What message?
Message after the message.
The Emperor commands you to make contact with him. It's a trick. Send no reply.
Jason and Jimmy, this is Jeff from Salem, Oregon. Happy Thanksgiving. I've been thinking a lot about this time of year. I used to remember that trailer drop that came out for The Force Awakens in Thanksgiving of 2014. And, as a result, I've been going back and listening to a lot of your guys' older episodes. I started listening in 2016, so I'd never listened to them, but starting in 2014 and into 2015, around when that trailer dropped, and guys, like the buzz was amazing. There was nothing quite like it. And a lot of that was because we're getting new Star Wars. We were told by George Lucas that we'd never get Star Wars again, and all of a sudden, here it is. And our first look, and I just remember being so exciting. And, for a lot of people, it was a fresh start. People believed that it was in better hands. My question to you guys is, and it's a really, really great conversation, is just reflecting on the buzz of that. And it was just electric. Everybody wanted in on Star Wars. What would it take to get that back? For some, those days are long gone. And I just think that'd be an interesting conversation. Are we going to get that when Filoni does his film, which, we're assuming is just one, but it could be more. Is that going to bring the buzz back when Star Wars returns back to theaters? Or is it when Disney sells the IP, which probably will never happen, and someone else picks up the reins? But I would love to hear your thoughts. You guys love the show. Happy Thanksgiving.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. Thanks for the voicemail. If you want to leave us a voicemail, you can do so at 708-3201-RFR. So the question, Jim, posed by our friend in Salem is, can we get the buzz back? And what would bring the buzz back? And I'll take the one question, can we get the buzz back? And I say absolutely we can get the buzz back. Those of us that were around at the time of the prequels and the fallout of the prequels, remember that we thought, oh boy, this was a rough go for Star Wars. Perhaps it doesn't quite have the same gas in the tank as it used to, and George seemed to be kind of, at that time, following Revenge of the Sith's release, fed up with a lot of fan and audience reaction, some of the criticism, some just, some unjust, I think. And he thought, that's it. And I didn't, I always wanted to believe that it was possible we would get more Star Wars films, but I didn't really think that was going to happen. But the buzz that we got in the build-up to the prequels was harnessed again and came roaring back, like Jeff says, in the lead up to the sequel trilogy, starting with that Black Friday teaser trailer of The Force Awakens in 2014. So can the buzz come back? Absolutely. We have historical precedent for it coming back a couple of different times. Now the question is, what would it take to bring the buzz back? Is the brand damaged to the point where it needs some resuscitation in order to get that theatrical buzz?
I have a lot of thoughts on this because the buzz has evolved over the years in a profound way. The original buzz came from 1977 because Star Wars was so fresh and universal, and it just hit all the right feels. It was just so appropriate for audiences of that era. And it was just cool. I mean, audiences of that era understood Star Wars was pretty much as cool as it gets when it came to entertainment in the 70s. And that even had a lasting effect. Things that came out after Star Wars were always being judged. Well, is it as cool as Star Wars? And every time it was failure. It was never as cool as Star Wars. But then Star Wars went on hiatus. And it's like, will we ever get the buzz back? I don't know. Will we get the buzz back? But the buzz did come back. It came roaring back in the late 90s with the release of the special edition, which was a surprise. That was a surprise buzz. Nobody was prepared for. Even George didn't think that it was going to have that kind of buzz. Nobody did. It was considered a huge gamble for Star Wars to get re-released in the theaters, even though it was touched up and there were additions made, yada, yada. It was still considered a huge, huge gamble because Star Wars had been available on demand in a home format for several years at that point. And there was no understanding of a marketplace that would pay and go out, leave their homes to see a movie that they can just pop into the VCR. Even, like I said, even with the additions. So that was a big surprise. So, big win for Star Wars. They did it again. And so now people are all focused on the prequels. The thing about the special editions, which was incredible, was it really did open the door for hyping up the prequels. Star Wars is coming back. We'll show you why Star Wars was so great in the 70s and early 80s, and that will get a whole generation primed for new Star Wars to hit the screens in the late 90s. So it was a great marketing move. Hype. And then when the prequels hit, nobody saw film hype of that magnitude. No. I don't think it ever. I mean, the Batman thing was a big deal. When Tim Burton's Batman came out in 89. That was some kind of hype, but nothing compared to the Phantom Menace. That was hype on a whole new level. The internet was now in play, even though it was still in its kind of primitive state. People were using it to communicate, and it was being used to promote, and it had become a factor. But it was really just the onslaught of the tie-ins with the fast food restaurants and just, I mean, it was Star Wars mania.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what typified it for me was the cover of Time magazine was about the return of Star Wars. It wasn't just big entertainment media that was covering this. It was, I mean, Time at the time still is. I mean, it was about as mainstream hard news as you could think. And they were covering the release of this thing. You compare it to Batman. Batman was considered a big gamble. The lead up to it, are the fans going to accept Mr. Mom as Batman? It opens up and it's a big success. But they started talking about the return of Star Wars, in 98, a full year or more before the movie came out. So the hype machine, I agree with you. I've never seen anything like it. I don't think we ever will again.
No, it was big. And it also heralded the arrival of franchise entertainment. That's when it all happened, and when it was all beginning in Hollywood. The real origins of franchise entertainment. And so that, continued throughout the prequels. Each release, episodes 1, 2, and 3, came with a lot of hype, but nothing compared to The Phantom Menace. And then you had the 10-year break again. So then when The Force Awakens rolled around, that hype was pretty outstanding.
It was.
I have to say. It became a cultural event to see Star Wars returning to the theaters.
But not just Star Wars, because it was I think if it had just been more Star Wars, it would have been one thing.
Yeah.
But the original cast coming back,
right,
that was everything. That injected it with a whole new enthusiasm.
Yes. But, Lucasfilm and Disney didn't quite see it that way, which is why there was that disconnect between the production and these films being released and the audience. The audience was seeing it as a return. Finally, we're going to see Luke, Han, and Leia again. And the filmmakers didn't quite see it that way. It became, as it evolved, into a real unfortunate situation.
Well, I want to go back and just ask you for clarity on this, because I don't think we've ever really talked about this. Do you think that Disney thought that the enthusiasm, or miscalculated that the enthusiasm was more of a general Star Wars is back enthusiasm, as opposed to there being so much fervor and love for the original cast coming back?
I think Disney felt like finally we can make Star Wars the right way. Because George Lucas has been out of touch.
And
I
we
think
won't
that
make
is the initial approach they took. Was let's do this the right way.
Not like he did with the prequels. Hence Disney's prequelitis, canceling Clone Wars, and all of that.
Yeah. So that was the origins of the disconnect. And then it spilled over into the content, and then it spilled over into what turned into like a civil war among the fan base. And Rebel Force Radio was right at the center of it. Hey, whatever. We're nothing but mere reflections of what happens in the Star Wars fan base in that moment.
Fellow travelers with everybody out there, yeah.
What was interesting, though, is that with all the hype leading into The Force Awakens and subsequent hype for each Star Wars sequel film, Star Wars ended up upstaging itself when The Mandalorian came out a month before The Rise of Skywalker, and Baby Yoda turned into this cultural hit. Huge cultural hit. All of a sudden, I'm seeing randos walking down the street wearing Baby Yoda sweatpants. It was a similar but different vibe to all the hype that led up to The Force Awakens or even The Phantom Menace. When Baby Yoda hit, it had that sort of cultural impact. The buzz is back. The buzz is back.
And do you remember there was no merch for Baby Yoda?
There was no merch.
That was a big deal.
And limited promotion. So what's interesting about the Baby Yoda buzz is not only did it upstage what Star Wars was putting out in the theaters via the sequel trilogy, it was like a real legitimate grassroots kind of thing, because it wasn't being fueled by hype or fast food tie-ins or commercials up the wazoo. It was fans responding to content.
It was organic.
And that is what will always bring the buzz back as we're dealing with entertainment in the year 2023 going on 2024. Things have changed drastically since the original trilogy, of course, since the prequel trilogy, of course, but really the biggest movement has happened since The Force Awakens came out. Entertainment has been twisted inside out and turned upside down. And so the old traditional ways of getting people hyped up for things and bringing the buzz, as Jeff from Oregon says, bringing the buzz back, it's not reliant on PR and publicity and promotion anymore. It comes down to content itself.
Yeah.
And if you can get that Baby Yoda moment, then the buzz is back. What's the next Baby Yoda moment for Star Wars? We shall see.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, absolutely. But great call and great topic of conversation. Jeff, appreciate it very much. Thank you so much. If you were starved for Rebel Force Radio content, you didn't need to be. The flagship show took a week off, but that doesn't mean you didn't have new Rebel Force Radio coming your way by way of Patreon. And Jim, I know you were busy putting out Patreon content for our Patreon supporters, including a new Q&A. And so what's the latest going on over there?
Hokey smokes, Bullwinkle. We had so much going on Patreon. We've released 3 RFR Q&A episodes since you last heard from us here on the weekly RFR. We had RFR Q&A number 184, Old School Kenner Star Wars Catalogs. Remember those little catalogs they used to put into vehicles and play sets and stuff? For a lot of us fans.
I still have a couple of those.
Yeah, I do too. And for a lot of his fans, seeing those little catalogs in the days before the internet and all the PR and hype and everything, we would learn about things from these little physical catalogs that would come in Kenner products. And a lot of times that would be the first time that would be character reveals for us. Who's this snow trooper? Oh, my Bosk. Wow. That's, I remember the days I first set my eyes on those characters and they were in action figure form in these old school Kenner catalogs. Well, me and Scott St. Louis get together on the RFR Q&A and we review them all. And we had a really good time doing it too. RFR Q&A number 185, the great unanswered questions in Star Wars, unsolved mysteries in the Star Wars saga. We discuss them all, myself and RFR VIP Jeff Holland. And we talk about unanswered questions from streaming series, animation, film, and we discuss how these questions should eventually be answered. Should they be answered in live action or as an animated show or in some other medium? We break it all down on RFR Q&A. And then just this week we release RFR Q&A number 186, Turtle War Strikes Back. Turtle War Strikes Back. We talk about turtles and Star Wars with Chris Turtle Wars Hagen, who has a vast knowledge of both topics. He's an expert in natural history and one of the top researchers of turtles. He's one of the top researchers in the field, and he's also an old school OT original member of the Star Wars generation from the 70s. Like me, who discovered Star Wars when it debuted, and we watched it grow throughout all these years. So we talk about so much stuff. We talk about Ahsoka and Turtles. We talk about The Mandalorian and Turtles. We talk about Turtles. It's a great time.
He was very excited about the turtle creatures in Ahsoka.
Well, we also discuss those because they're not even close to being turtles, although a lot of people refer to them as turtles. They're more of a hermit crab sort of situation. Turtles don't have eyes on stalks. That's the first lesson that Turtle Wars Chris Hagen teaches us.
He throws down. All right.
Yeah. Oh, he throws down.
Stop calling them turtles. Stop calling them turtles.
Dude, it's a fascinating discussion. And to have a mashup of Star Wars and Turtles, you don't find this stuff anywhere else. Only on RFR are we crazy enough to bring you content like Star Wars and Turtles. Get out of your shell. Join us on Patreon. Come check out what we're offering over there because it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of content. Most people tell me they can't keep up with it. There's so much going on. So there's always going to be something there for you to listen to, something for you to watch, or just have a bunch of laughs within the community itself, which is ever growing. And right now we have the most members we've ever seen at RFR on Patreon. More and more Rebel Force Radio listeners are getting on board with all of the bonus content we have to offer over there at patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio. Join today. Many tiers, many different ways you can get the bonuses and the bonus podcasts, ad-free shows, full show video. It's all there. Rebel Force Radio on Patreon, patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio.
I have good news for you, my lord.
That's good news. Come closer, I have good news.
Well, I do know that there were many Star Wars fans giving thanks at their Thanksgiving table about the news that came out about Dave Filoni and his new job title. Jim, going back to some of the fallout of the sequel trilogy, The Mandalorian being on Disney Plus in juxtaposition to what was going on in the sequel trilogy, I remember going back to those days when people were saying, make Dave Filoni Chief Creative Officer. I remember people using that exact title in their wishes for Dave. And here we go all the way now into 2023. And the news broke that is now his official title. He still is an executive vice president, but he's also now Chief Creative Officer, which gives him a lot more say-so in, according to what Dave is saying, a lot more say-so in the development of content at its most at its earliest stages. We'll put it that way. So, does this make him the Kevin Feige of Star Wars?
I would say no, not even close, because he's still surrounded by all the same old people from Lucasfilm. He still answers to Kathy Kennedy. He's still working with Carrie Beck, who was brought in, and she also received a promotion along the way, too.
We know that Dave is going to be reporting to Kathleen directly, though I think that's been the case for some time.
Carrie Beck is head of development of live action at Lucasfilm. And so she and Filoni report to Kathleen Kennedy. Carrie Beck was put into that position when Kathy Kennedy took over at Lucasfilm in late 2012, when Carrie Hart was essentially serving the role that Filoni is in now. And Carrie Hart was brought on board to create a story group, and Carrie Hart brought in Carrie Beck at that time. Carrie was working for the Sundance organization, the ones who do the film festivals and all that. She had no experience, really. I mean, very limited experience. Carrie Hart herself had very limited experience, and they fleshed out the story group with a ton of people who had no experience in filmmaking, outside of mundane jobs. And it was like, wow, you guys are turning over the keys to Star Wars to these guys? What? And Carrie Beck has survived some of the beheadings that have happened over there. In the wake of the Solo film, Kathleen Kennedy protected herself by firing Carrie Hart, her hand-picked chosen one to create the story group. Carrie Hart, she got her walking papers and essentially was replaced by Michelle Rejwan. Michelle Rejwan survived the rise of Skywalker, but couldn't keep up with the massive failure of Willow, and they showed her the door last year. Her career has basically stagnated since then.
Mm-hmm.
Now, bringing Carrie Beck and Dave Filoni, basically serving as a two-headed monster underneath Kathleen Kennedy, and they are going to oversee live action development and basically all storytelling, anything on a narrative.
Carrie Beck, her new title is just head of development, not head of development live action. She is head of development. So I think they're consolidating all
just
the
like
storytelling.
Everything.
Yeah,
right?
It's everything.
And I mean, she's had a history with the animation stuff. She worked on Rebels. She worked on Forces of Destiny. She was part of the creative crew on Star Wars Resistance. And so now she's given keys to the castle along with Dave Filoni. And so what's happening is Filoni is going to be used as more of than just a consultant as he had been being used. He's going to be on the ground floor of everything that's being created story-wise at Lucasfilm. I don't think everything, like novels and comics and things like that, not stuff or online content, just like
I
the
think
live action
on-screen
and
stuff. I think on-screen.
The real canon, impactful
Yeah, the screen stuff. Yeah. If it's happening on a TV or a movie screen, Dave Filoni is going to be involved. We do have a quote from him. It is we don't have the audio of this, so I'm going to give you my best shot. So
just you know what, just put Dave on the screen though, so I could just look at him and hear the voice, because that will theater of the mind. I like that.
Sure. I got to do the warm up here.
Yeah, I know. Just make sure the picture you showed, he's not wearing a hat. So make sure you sound like him without a hat. That's my only direction for you.
Okay, thank you. No hat. In the past, in a lot of projects, I would be brought into it. I would see it after it had already developed a good ways. In this new role, it's opened up to basically everything that's going on. When we're planning the future of what we're doing now, I'm involved at the inception phase. So there you go. Dave Filoni talking about his new role. So that's important at the inception phase. I know that a lot of fans are seeing that, and they're excited about, okay, he can stop some of these mistakes before they snowball and they get too far down the road. How does this, however, differ from his consultancy? Well, in the past, things he would catch this stuff further downstream when there had been significant money, time invested into a certain concept, idea, and he was sort of powerless, I would assume, to really enforce any great change. Now this stuff, as it's being ideated, is going to be run by Dave through Dave.
Good.
Yeah, I say good. This is only good news.
Well, okay, that's glass half full.
Okay.
I'm going to give you glass half empty.
Uh-huh.
Solo. Curie Hart. Gone. Willow. Michelle Rejuan. Gone. Should something have a massive flop that Dave Filoni oversaw, I just worry about Kathy Kennedy using him as a human shield because she survives everything.
Okay.
Now, that could be a PR disaster for Lucasfilm, but amongst hardcore fans. But I mean, amongst the wide swath of consumers who are the Disney target audience, I mean, do they even know who Dave Filoni is, and do they even care? He could just be another executive biting the dust to protect Kathy Kennedy.
I thought I had the exact same thought that this could be a way of her to insulate herself from the heat that could be coming. So here's something we also know. This is where your theory might actually have hold a lot of water, is that there's multiple films already in development. And these things are going to come out, and it's unlikely that Dave Filoni will have been able to exert his chief creative officer powers over some of these things that are already out. So what's to stop the perception from being created that if the Mangold film or the Ray film, the Obaid Chinoy Ray film, doesn't resonate with fans, well, you fans, you wanted Dave Filoni in charge. We put Dave Filoni in charge, and you're still not happy.
Yeah. Well, what? You thought the Acolyte was not up to par? Well, sorry, but Dave Filoni has to go. What? Wait, what?
Yeah.
No, I don't think it's going to be that extreme. It's just, like I said, look at the scoreboard and look at the people who are sitting in the position that's primarily being helmed now by Dave Filoni and Carrie Beck. Heads have rolled because of Lucasfilm failures. Kathy Kennedy stays in her position, but there are scapegoats. Curie Hart, Michelle Rejuan. That's just two of them. You know, there's others. There's things that happen behind the scenes I don't know about. My God, of course.
Yeah.
Especially with how terribly secretive Lucasfilm is. But it doesn't take much to see what's going on from the outside looking in to understand what's going on here. I mean,
all right. The one quote that really jumped out at me here is, this is Filoni saying, to truly help filmmakers, it was really important for me to experience it firsthand. I can also lend a perspective on the challenges that telling these stories will present. I feel more capable of actually being helpful outside of just saying, well, Jedi are like this and the Sith are like this. To help filmmakers, it was really important for me to experience it firsthand. This sounds a little bit to me like Dave will no longer be experiencing filmmaking firsthand, that he is now the chief creative officer, that he was able to gain that firsthand experience, and now he's moving on to something else. Is Dave being, in some ways, put out to pasture and giving him this chief creative officer gig here?
No, I predict he will still maintain a seat in the director's chair.
You think he'll still do the firsthand creation?
Yes.
In addition to?
Yes,
okay,
I do. But it's very, very interesting what you're saying. It's something I never really considered. Is this a move to isolate Dave in the executive branch of Lucasfilm and get him away from actual directing, writing, etc.? That's interesting. That's interesting. Maybe that's what Carrie Beck is there for, you know? She'll handle a lot of the grunt work so Filoni can remain creative and spend time in the writer's room.
Right.
And spend time with the directors and spend time with the concept guys and all that. I mean, wow, it's a lot, you know? I mean, a lot of people talk about how stretched thin Kevin Feige has been over the last few years because of Disney's insistence of doing 1,000 Marvel movies and TV shows all at once. But I think they may have learned their lesson because of the dwindling box office. Disney might be pulling back the reins a little bit, and they're bleeding money. I don't think a film studio's ever lost more money in one calendar year than Disney has this year.
Absolutely brutal.
And I'm not saying that to gloat, because I want Star Wars to be successful, for crying out loud, right. You know? We all have a better time when there's Star Wars is super successful, and we love it. We want those Baby Yoda moments, damn it. So, yeah, I'm rooting for it all, but I'm just astounded to see how the Disney company has dumped so much money into all of this content that hasn't really made any money. It's all in the red, and it makes me a little nervous too, you know, for the futures of Star Wars and other franchise entertainment. I mean, I think the final nail has been put in Indiana Jones's coffin, and I thought there was going to be years of storytelling around that franchise, but I don't see it happening.
No, for me, the best case scenario in this is that they recognize that Dave Filoni has likely the most profound and deep understanding of how Star Wars works than anybody other than George Lucas. And that, like George Lucas, he's an incredible storyteller, a great idea guy, knows how to corral and keep that universe intact, and that they use him in a similar way that they wanted to use George Lucas back in 2011, 2010 when they were negotiating the sale, and that Dave will be that guy, that fount from which all of these stories flow, and then you can get all of these great filmmakers, and they can take it from there. That's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is that he becomes some sort of titular figurehead that's thrown to the wolves because of all these things that are already in motion. He hasn't had an opportunity to really impact or affect. So
I like how you say thrown to the wolves when you're talking about Filoni. It's very appropriate.
But he is a survivor, Jim. I mean, he survived the hatchets that were coming down all around him. He was surrounded from the Lucasfilm video game division, a lot of good friends of his, the whole animation studio, the Clone Wars, everything was collapsing around him, but Dave survived. So he
along
is
with
survivor.
a few other department heads.
Yeah.
But I mean, really, the entire Lucas animation got flushed. And there was a period of time. I can be candid about this because I was talking to Dave and other people at Lucasfilm. There was a time when future was very uncertain in early 2013 for Dave Filoni. He had no guarantees. He was sitting in a good position, and we knew it. But did the new owners of Star Wars know it? Did Disney know it? Did Kathy Kennedy know it? Kathy Kennedy seemed very gung-ho on bringing in all new people.
Yeah.
Story group. Just to me, that's like a way of saying, keep out to the old keepers of the story. It's almost like keep out. But Dave persevered. I think a lot of PR he did here on Rebel Force Radio helped boost his reputation and build his profile with his new bosses. It was just the fact that the Clone Wars had a target on its back the second George Lucas signed those papers.
Yeah.
The Clone Wars was a dead show walking, and that was Dave Filoni's show. So naturally, there were great fears. Well, speaking of Dave Filoni, we have a lot of great clips from him. He talks about the Ahsoka series here with Entertainment Weekly, and unless you have anything else to say about this Filoni
let's get
promotion,
to it. I've been chomping at the bit to hear some fresh content from Dave because with the strikes we weren't able to. We had a lot of stuff leading into the premiere of Ahsoka, but there was nothing following the drops of these episodes because that was all during the strike. So this is great to finally hear from Dave post-mortem after we've seen all 8 episodes.
Yes, post-mortem, post-mortis, whatever. We like hearing from Filoni. So here he is talking about the Ahsoka series. No topic is off limits. Let's start with why. Why team up Ahsoka and Sabine? I've been asking this question. Those two characters never even spoke to each other in the whole Rebels series, but they were featured at the very end with the inference that they were going to go off to search for Ezra Bridger. So I think Filoni talks a little bit about that final scene from Star Wars Rebels, the series, and why he thought it was such a good idea to team up Ahsoka and Sabine.
It was something that I really got interested in when we made Star Wars Rebels. She became so much more by the end of that series than just a warrior. She had a real struggle. She was a fighter. She was kind of brash. She reminded me a lot of Anakin in a lot of ways. And I thought, this is a really good pairing because for Ahsoka, I could see a tendency to want to teach somebody that reminds her of her mentor, but I can also see the danger that would be present in that. So the familiarity can go two ways. And I just really liked Sabine and her reckless nature. It reminded me, again, of Anakin and Ahsoka's pairing. And there was a lot to kind of unwind there in her own history. It had to be complicated. And it was even better if they just weren't getting along at the beginning.
So there was some similarities between Anakin and Sabine that Dave felt would make an interesting, I guess, rhyme with, going through the George Lucas rhyming theory where she would get saddled. Ahsoka would get saddled with someone who was very much like her master, very headstrong and all of that. I got to be honest. But I got to be honest. When I was watching, I was never sitting there going, hey, that's Sabine. She's just like Anakin.
Right. It was a surprising team up, to say the least.
Yeah.
And then to have the Ahsoka series begin and we get thrown the knowledge that not only was Ahsoka and Sabine teamed up, but Ahsoka was actually training Sabine in the ways of the Jedi and how to connect with the Force and all of that. It's where does that all come from? That was just so head-scratching. And I wished that Dave, instead of just saying, well, she reminded me of Anakin a little bit. I get that, and I love that. I love that explanation, but give us some substance behind the story as opposed to just, well, it seems like an Anakin thing. You know, how about giving us some dialogue where Ahsoka says, you know who you remind me of? You know, give us some, just like, as opposed to like what's going on in the back of your head. Throw it into the script so there's some substance in there and we're not all just like scratching our heads constantly waiting for the postseason interviews. You know, give us the substance. And speaking of Sabine's connection to the Force, Dave does talk about that. It was a surprise to me. And Dave talks about how Sabine connects to the Force. And he also gets into some conversation about how we as fans perceive the connection to the Force and what it really could mean and how he interprets it. It's very interesting. So let's hear what Dave has to say about good old Sabine Wren's surprising connection to the Force.
The idea that she's not incredibly adept at wielding the Force, I think, is a strong thing. Because when I was a kid, I never really considered, it's amazing now fans and how the Star Wars franchise has evolved. There are all these thoughts and opinions and groups, and you can find different camps on how they think everything works. But very fundamentally, if you just pay attention to the films George made, you understand that the Force is an energy field created by all living things. So the Force emanates from all of us and everything, right? All living things. It surrounds us, it penetrates us, it binds the galaxy together. So she's not absent from the Force. She is part of the Force. Part of the problem is it's like anything in life that you want to do. You have to train hard to acquire the skills. So it's not that everyone can become a Jedi and everybody cannot become a Jedi, because we know there are things in our life, take martial arts skills or even something like yoga, and say, if I did that, that's better for me, that's healthier, that's empowering. So why don't we all do it? It takes time, it takes commitment, and even people that do it don't all turn out to be great at it. So in Star Wars, I'm sure people are aware, obviously, that there are Jedi Knights. Fewer people are even aware that the Force exists. They don't understand how the Jedi do what they do. But like Qui-Gon says, to train to be a Jedi it's a hard life. It's difficult to do. Many people would never even come close to achieving their goal of manipulating an object without the Force, let alone pushing or pulling somebody else, because then that person's will is set against you, and that makes it even harder. So I wanted to tell the story, though, of like she's a very talented warrior. She's a very talented person, but this is not something that's easy for her. And I think that makes it relatable to people, where generally in Star Wars, we've always seen very gifted people be trained. And I wanted to show kind of the opposite, with the warning that if she achieves her potential, there's also a danger in that, because of the way she is as a warrior. She's prone to anger. All the things that makes Ahsoka concerned could flare up. I don't know. It was kind of fun. It was fun, hearing the debate that people were having about it. And, that we'll see what happens.
I bet some of that debate was right here on Rebel Force. I'm not a betting man,
sure.
but
yeah, right.
Old habits die hard, right, Dave? So this is as we predicted. This is as we talked about, that, yes, there is plenty of prior art, prior dialogue that would lend itself to this theory that the Force is within all of us. The potential is there. Jim, I think the analogy you used on some of our after shows was, of a great athlete, a great basketball player. Everyone can learn how to dribble and shoot baskets, but there's going to be some that are they just got the touch, the thing that are going to make them better than others. Some do it by natural talent. Some do it by true grit. So that seems to be where Dave is hanging his hat on the Sabine Force sensitivity thing.
Yeah, for some Jedi, the Force just naturally flows through them. And like young Anakin, he could use it without even knowing it when he's racing pods and things of that nature. He's tapping into the Force, but he doesn't even realize he's doing it. He just thinks that, I'm the only one who can do it. Yeah, he's just being a kid.
It's the craziest thing.
He's being a kid. But then for the ones who want to use the Force, I mean, they can't just stumble into it. They're not gifted. They have to work and work and work and work, and they still even struggle to connect. But I liken Sabine to young Timmy Lupus from the film Bad News Bears. Timmy was the little. He was the nose-picking kid they'd always send him out to right field, or he played the little league position of left out often, where he would even get onto the field. But there's that one game. It was the championship game, and Timmy was out in right field, and there was a fly ball, and the game was on the line. And that little Timmy Lupus caught the ball. That was like Sabine tapping into the Force during that battle on Peridia when she was able to use the telekinesis to bring the saber to her hand and then use it to push Ezra onto the Star Destroyer. That was Timmy Lupus catching the ball. We never really found out what happened to Timmy after he caught that ball. He probably went on to an MLB Hall of Fame career if the story was properly told. But the sequels to the Bad News Bears sucked. And so I don't want anybody writing to me going, well, when the Bad News Bears went to Japan, Timmy Lucas, I don't want to hear that. All right, to me, there's one film and one film only.
That's right. Unless it has Walter Matthau in it, didn't happen.
That's right, Walter Matthau. Yeah, pouring bourbon into his cans of beer. I mean,
all right, who hasn't done that? Come on.
Boy, that movie still stands up today. Oh, but there's some language in there you couldn't get away with today. My God. That foul-mouthed Tanner. What a little SOB he is. But a great movie, and I stand by my Timmy Lupus Sabine parallels. Their story, there's great parallels. Anyone could go out and play outfield in a Little League game. But are you going to catch the ball that seals the deal for the championship when you have to do it, even though you've never done it before? That's Sabine in Ahsoka.
Yeah.
And I love what Filoni's saying. And, making the Force more democratic, I guess, making it more accessible to people. There weren't really rules about the Force so much, maybe until the prequels.
I think a lot of that, Jim, Dave is very specific in that quote. He says, look, if you just look at the films that George made,
yeah.
It was a lot. I feel like it was a lot of the tie-in material that really tried to make a lot more out of the whole Anakin midichlorian stuff than George originally intended. I mean, he's been on record as saying that it was a device so that he could show that this guy had more of something than this guy.
Right. It was just like turning over a baseball card and looking at the statistics. And you could say, well, look how many home runs he hit. Well, that's how he used it to justify this kid coming out of nowhere being considered a candidate to get trained as a Jedi. Why? Why was that? Because he was good at racing? George could have done something cheesy like had Anakin actually use the Force in front of Qui-Gon. Like Anakin's just sitting there and, he's working on 3PO. He goes, I need a wrench. And he just reaches out and the wrench floats to his hand and Qui-Gon goes, you should be trained as a Jedi,
Or maybe he brings like a broom to his hand.
That's kind of cheesy and on the nose and so straightforward and so scratching the surface. I mean, to present the midichlorian things, I know people were repulsed by it because it presented a scientific explanation for a Force connection.
Mm-hmm.
But but George made it very clear that the reason why Anakin was so gifted was because of the high midichlorian count. Yet Anakin couldn't use the Force. He didn't have that connection to the Force.
He still required training.
You still needed the training. Yeah,
you can't control it. I think it's. Obi-Wan says that about Luke, but you can't control it. The Force is flowing. I feel the Force, but you can't control it. The other thing about the midichlorians is that, yes, a higher proportion of them does give you the ability to, maybe reach further heights of power. But I think some of it just comes from necessity. Like you hear these stories about people like, a car falls on someone and someone who shouldn't be able to lift a car is able to lift a car. When I see scenes like, in The Phantom Menace when Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan sort of do that super fast running away from the droid Dukas.
Yeah.
I feel like the Force meets your needs. It's sort of like the room of requirement in Harry Potter, where when you're really tapped into the Force, it's going to provide you with the abilities that you need in the moment. And so I think that's where it comes into play, where you have to sort of let go of your feelings. So the more you try to, and I'm using a bad choice of words here, the more you try to force it, the harder it is. And I think that's where Sabine is at. I think she is, she's grunting, trying to move things, but the spirit of the Force and what it means to be tapped into it is elusive to her until the moment where she really needs it.
And something else that I'd like to point out is just because you see a Force ability being displayed by a certain character doesn't necessarily mean that every person who connects to the Force is capable of those abilities. There are specialties among Jedi Knights. Some can see the future. Some can, when teamed up with their master, they can run really fast down a hallway like Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon do.
Yeah.
We never see any Jedi do that. And I've heard that so many fans say, well, why didn't, when Qui-Gon was fighting with Darth Maul, why didn't Obi-Wan just run that super speed to get back into the battle? Well, it's because he couldn't do it. He needed to have his master with him. And maybe Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon together as master and apprentice, that was the only way they could achieve those top speeds, is by, somehow connecting to the Force. And maybe they were the only master and apprentice in the Jedi Council, in the Jedi Knighthood, who could pull that off.
Yeah.
It's not all just a given. Most people think all Jedi can see the future. All Jedi can move things with their mind. All Jedi can be great pod racers or great pilots. It's specific, I believe, to the individual Force user. And I think it's far more interesting that way, too, because it gives different characters individuality, as opposed to just making a team of people who all do the same thing.
All do the same parlor trick. Yeah.
Yeah. But so the midi-chlorians, you said it best. George used it as a storytelling device. Yeah. And a lot of people, including myself, have been critical about the world between worlds, because it's something that, like, I never thought the Force should be a place you could go, nor do I like the fact that you could time jump with it or change history and all that stuff. But I've grown to understand it a little bit more. And I've grown to see it as, like what you say, a storytelling device. And I believe in this clip from Dave Filoni, you'll see he looks at the world between worlds in the same fashion.
The way I think about that is more as like a cinematic device and a way to tell the story of the Clone Wars without you having to watch the entire Clone Wars. When I did it for Rebels, it was for a different purpose. It was really for Ezra to relive his experience of his mentor dying and to kind of bring Ahsoka into that story in a nice way and have him do something selfless for somebody else, which was, just as valuable, if not more, than doing it for what he wanted it to, be, which is save his master. In this story, knowing that I had that kind of device, I wanted to use it as the transition point between, Ahsoka before and Ahsoka after, and make that a real change in her and have her actually confront Anakin and the questions that she would have about him, the fact that he became Darth Vader, which remains largely unspoken in the scenes, but is definitely present in the scenes. That she understands it. And Ariana does a great job at showing us that without us just saying it and kind of devolving into a Star Wars history lesson. It becomes a much more powerful thing of this young girl who's mentoring to this powerful Jedi who becomes an evil person. And what does that mean? And she has unresolved issues with it.
I got to tell you, is this not a breath of fresh air to hear somebody responsible for a Star Wars live action series to have real answers to questions about this stuff? I mean, compare this to, the answers that you'd get out of, what was her name that ran the Kenobi series?
Deborah Chow.
Deborah Chow. Compare the depth of of knowledge and answers that Filoni gives. Now, you can disagree with Filoni, and Jim, we've stood there with Dave as he holds court at conventions back in the day, and he loved being challenged, and he loved being able to hear other points of view. So you can disagree with his answers. I'm not saying you should agree that they're the right answer, but he has an answer. And not only is it an answer, it's an answer that has a lot of detail to it. And that is what has been sorely missing. So it's really refreshing to hear somebody talking about a live-action Star Wars series with the depth that Dave Filoni brings to it. Again, whether you agree or not, it doesn't matter. In this case, at least it's something to talk about instead of, yeah, well, he was a master and he was his apprentice, and and they fought in that one in Star Wars, and so they're fighting again. That was the level of stuff that we got from the people handling Kenobi, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why Dave has ascended to this chief creative officer over there at Star Wars, and why his impact will be felt on future productions is because he actually knows what the hell is going on.
Right. Imagine that.
So, yes, talking about knowing what's going on, Dave, it's always been a desire of his to work with Hayden Christensen. I mean, for many obvious reasons, but what I find really cool is that Dave felt a connection with Hayden because they're two guys who worked pretty closely with George Lucas, and apparently they compared notes.
I've been looking forward to this, to working with Hayden for a very long time. We met several years ago at a celebration, and we have an instant connection, not the least of which is because we both worked with George, and we both have such a great respect for George Lucas and what he's created. And so it was kind of amazing to have somebody that had this experience for me to talk to and would know the things I was talking about related to Anakin and how George saw him. And we really understood each other and the language of it. And he was very interested in what we'd done in Clone Wars with the heroic Anakin, which he didn't really get a chance to be in the films because it's really about Anakin's downfall. So he had done a lot of watching, and he's talked about that. And we just discussed, this isn't really a story about Anakin, but it's important how Ahsoka sees Anakin, because this is her lived experience. Your story was already told in George's saga. That's done. But it is important for her because you're her mentor. And you have to be both. I was always saying, you have to be the great person that she admired, that we all admired. That when I was a kid and I heard that Luke's father was Anakin Skywalker, and I was like, he must have been the greatest Jedi ever. Let's fulfill that promise, because we saw you be young, we saw you be adventurous, but really fall to the dark side. We saw you making the decisions that became critical in your life that made you succumb to Palpatine's deception. But let's show you as the heroic older brother, the person that kind of cracks wise and makes jokes and, can be serious, but completely cavalier. And he was all for it. Like, he dove so far into it. It was almost, just amazing. It gave me pause just to stand there and look at him in the costume, standing next to Ariana, because in my mind, it's really no different.
Boy,
I felt the same way,
Yes, same. When he's talking about, be the Anakin that's, cracks wise and is, cavalier and all that, my Anakin, the Anakin that I wrote, that I gave life to.
With George.
And that's what's so important here is Dave does more than just pay lip service to George's legacy. Again, comparing it to some of the other creatives that have worked on some of these series, George is, you're lucky if you get one name drop of George, but how, I want to say sad, but let's just say how interesting, how telling is it that Dave's only common frame of reference regarding George, the only one he can connect to is with an actor that worked with him 20 some years ago. He's not surrounded by people that worked with George anymore. The Dennis Murins and they're not around.
Yeah.
You know,
John Knoll's still there.
John's there, and so is Doug Chang.
Doug Chang, yeah, but it's a very small roster of guys who actually had George Lucas's ear,
right?
And who George would also confide in. And and Hayden is definitely among those ranks.
Mm-hmm.
It's great he's back. And I think that makes a difference because I feel like Hayden put in a much greater performance in the Ahsoka series than he did in the Kenobi series. I mean, he was great in the Kenobi series. Don't get me wrong. I thought those were moments.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like those are moments when he wasn't Anakin. That moment when he was training with Obi-Wan, that was pretty neat. But it was still more about the lesson Obi-Wan was teaching and all of that.
He was Episode 2 era Anakin. He was he was the precocious, kind of arrogant guy. He wasn't the. Yeah, he wasn't the Anakin of the Clone Wars yet. Yeah.
Yes. And that Anakin has a lot of heart. More than the films gave him really time to expose. And the films didn't give us a relationship like he had with Ahsoka. It just didn't. It was the romance. It was the struggle against authority. It was the being stripped away from your mom and your home and dropped into the coldness of space, just being alone, all of those things is what made up the cinematic Anakin. But it was the Clone Wars Anakin that did reveal him as having the compassionate relationships, the mentor, the mentoring he did for Ahsoka, and also the hero, the hero of the war. And that stuff doesn't get revealed so much in the films. And that's why the Clone Wars is so important. And it's nice to see Hayden have his day in the sun in that guise of the character.
For sure.
Yeah. So speaking of character, it was something that had us scratching our head was like, what's up with Ahsoka in the very beginning of the series? She's like in the dumps. It seems like she's very, very withdrawn.
Ahsoka, we called her.
Ahsoka, what's up with Ahsoka? Well, Filoni talks about that dour attitude she had and what the purpose was for it, and it's pretty obvious. But let's just hear from the mouth of Filoni.
I think a lot of people's perception of Ahsoka is still based on the 14 to 16-year-old girl she was during the Clone Wars, which is where she gets her nickname Snips. And it's snippy and fun, and she can be a bit brattish and push the limits of. Come on, kid, you're annoying me, but she's meant to do that. But now she's much older. And so it's different for people. So I think having the complete picture with Ariana and Rosario together, making the character really tells you it is that same person. And now we can move forward with it.
Yeah. So it was setting up a character arc for Ahsoka.
Yeah, it was. But I mean, there was, again, it lacked substance. It was just because.
Yeah. Just because.
There was no substance to it. Give us some substance. Have us experience Ahsoka dealing with loss. Just don't present us with this sort of half-baked approach.
It's not like
I love what's going on in Filoni's head. I just would like him to spill it onto the paper.
Yes. Right.
You were saying
Well, I mean, especially when it's a character that we've met before. It's one thing, because people say, well, you didn't know what was going on with Luke Skywalker when you met him in Star Wars A New Hope. No, because he was a new character in that moment. Right. In A New Hope, he was a brand new character.
He was emerging.
Now with Ahsoka, we've been through a lot with this character, and now you're taking a big turn in the personality. So you got to give, for the people that are new, the newbies coming on board, they don't need all of that because this character is new to them. But for us, we need a little something.
Yeah. And that what you just said there might really explain a little bit about the approach they took to this series. It's almost as if they were like, well, this character has a lot of background and history with the animated stuff, but let's just leave that in kind of a gray area and start fresh with this Ahsoka. And new viewers will latch onto that without having to worry about the weight of everything she experienced in the Clone Wars until they get about midway through the season, and they'll drop that bomb on you with the flashbacks via the World Between Worlds and all of that.
Yeah.
And that's how they expose the story. I don't know. I don't think that approach works. I thought there was something lost in the execution, and I think they need to take it back to the drawing board and try to figure out what's up. You brought up before, what if they're moving Filoni into this executive position to take him away from the writer's room, take him out of the director's chair? And you know what? I was thinking maybe that's why we haven't heard about Ahsoka season 2 yet. Why that seems like very much in the mist right now. Even though it seems very obvious that season 1 requires a season 2.
Right.
Why should it even be a question at this point? Well, I mean, outside of the money men at Disney, who are obviously holding the purse strings very tight right now, is probably really the real reason why we don't know things. So I don't want to jump into any conclusions about Filoni's promotion, but
they might be thinking, if you're asking yourself out there, saying, well, like Jimmy said, the first season assumes a second one because of where the story ends up. But if the bean counters at Disney say it's not in the cards, it's something that could be continued in the Filoni film or some other film. So there's other avenues for it. I don't think that I don't think the accountants are losing sleep over unanswered story questions for fans.
Right. And I'm just fingers crossed that Skeleton Crew will tie into Ahsoka and give us sort of an Ahsoka season 2.5, like Book of Boba Fett gave us an extension of the Mandalorian season. Hey, why not? But we're talking about Ahsoka season 1 and only season, and so much has been said about that episode, or part 5, as they say, part 5 of the series, where you had all the flashbacks with Hayden Christensen and young Ahsoka, played by Ariana Greenblatt. And Filoni talks a little bit about that, about what it was like to see his creations from the Clone Wars, the Anakin-Ahsoka relationship, come to life via live action.
When I saw Ariana as young Ahsoka, that was a real thunderbolt, because that character in that form is really the first thing that I contributed to Star Wars and at Lucasfilm. She was a discussion point from really day one with George and I, in the very beginning. And I remember drawing that character and figuring out what she was going to look like before anybody was even aware that Anakin even had a Padawan. And so there was this awesome moment where Ariana was sitting there on the ground, kind of kneeling, and she was telling, I don't know what she was talking about, but she was just telling this story to a bunch of guys dressed as clones. And it was the most one-to-one real thing I'd ever seen. And I just sat there and stared at it. And it was she wasn't acting. She wasn't being Ahsoka, but she was being so Ahsoka. And I was like, wow, it's exactly what it was. This young girl captivated all these soldiers because she's got that charisma. She was that thing. And, that was kind of really jaw-dropping for me. And those were very fun days. Those are the days where people would just filter onto the set that normally aren't there because they just wanted to stand there and watch it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It was cool. He also talks about how a bunch of people came to the set to watch the Darth Vader moment. And all they basically did was shoot Darth Vader walking in a straight line. But apparently the set filled up to capacity because everyone wants to see Darth Vader in the flesh, And
did they say whether that was Hayden?
No, I don't think it was Hayden.
Yeah.
I don't think it was Hayden. But a big question mark about Ahsoka is, again, like I said, it almost requires a season 2 because we were left with Baylan Skull finding the Mortis gods carved into rock and everything. And it's like, oh my God, what a bombshell to drop on us right before you roll the credits before the final episode. I mean, like everyone else, we're wondering, well, where is this going? Does Filoni himself know where it's going?
The only way I can do this and keep up with it is if I have an idea of where it all goes. That doesn't mean that I stick to it like it's a recipe, but I do have in mind when I start any given project where I think it should end up. Otherwise, I don't understand why I'm telling the story. And it has to be about the emotional experiences of the character and what it means for them and what it means on a human scale, not about something Star Wars. And that gets very challenging the farther you go with the story because you're collecting all this information that's about, this particular universe. And so those statues are the Mortis gods, right? But other people that have never seen Rebels will have no idea what has never seen Clone Wars. They won't know. The idea in the end for me is that's okay, as long as you understand those are monolithic figures and it means something. That's the power of that image, right? This person has found this massive scale sculpture that's unlike anything we've seen on that planet up to that point. The question you're supposed to ask is, what does that mean? If you know more than that, that's fine.
So, he is walking a tightrope with this where he realizes that he has to approach it despite what the reality is. If the reality is that 90% of the people that tuned in and watched Ahsoka were fans of Clone Wars and Rebels and were really tuned in, is beside the point. He has to approach it because they have a wide scope of potential viewers. He has to approach it with that the majority may not know what these things are. So on the one hand, it gives him somewhat of a cleaner slate, but on the other hand, there's no avoiding the fact that whether it be 10% or 90% know what those things are.
And that's why it surprises me the way that things were executed on the show, because I see it the exact opposite way. I think it was too steeped in things that have been established in animation and storylines that were established, loose threads from animation. I feel like this whole season was essentially Star Wars Rebels Season 5 more than an Ahsoka series. I feel like that was the focus more, was continuing the animated story than it was telling a fresh story about a new character in new to live action character in Star Wars, Ahsoka. You could have just started totally fresh. That would have been the way to approach it, to appeal to a mainstream audience. Start totally fresh with the character and then reveal little tidbits about the past along the way while telling a fresh story. This doesn't tell a fresh story. This picks up story threads left over from Star Wars Rebels. So I don't see them walking a tightrope at all. And I think any talk about this show appealing to a wide mainstream audience is all just lip service, because this was Star Wars Rebels Season 5, and it required a huge price of admission to understand what the holy hell was going on with this show. And even knowing everything still left you scratching your head about things. It seemed it was an extension of Rebels, but also there was mad inconsistencies and huge swaths of untold story.
But isn't it interesting, though, when you hear Dave talk, it sounds as though he was exercising real restraint. He talks as though he
like
was.
I said, that's just lip service to me. Somebody not so connected to it might have, visited Dave in the writing room and said, well, you need to establish this, expand on that, build a foundation for this. None of that happened. It all required you to know everything from Star Wars Rebels. I found that with my friends and casual fans who I run into on a day-to-day basis, they were completely in the dark about Ahsoka and didn't want to have to do all the mental gymnastics to make it connect. So they bailed. My own wife said midway through the first episode, this is too steeped in the lore. I can't follow this. And she bailed. She loved the girl power of it, but just couldn't stick around because it was too foggy for her. So, lip service.
Yeah.
One more thing. Obviously, Filoni addresses the fact that, there is more story to tell.
I've set up several threads that can continue, but if not, then I feel like, well, at least I got Ezra home, and that was really important. So that's kind of the way I look at that. But there's always a plan. When I start a story, I usually have a note on this is the critical thing that we're trying to get to. And that's what I'm trying to, we do the animation things or anything else. I'm always, what is this about? And that can change. It can evolve. But there's a bunch of stuff. I hope, one day we'll see it. Could be very cool. Took a while to get this one done. So you never know. It's always in motion is the future. So you're never sure what way the wheels are going to turn.
Boy, we've heard that answer from Dave many times over the years. I got to tell you, though, as far as just listening to his tone of voice and the answers, you're right. He doesn't sound, to me, super confident. We've heard Dave give answers where he can't come out and say the words, but you know what he's getting at. My interpretation of this answer is he doesn't know.
No. Well,
he does not know.
Nothing is certain right now. I mean, the financial future of Disney franchises is definitely going to have an impact on the amount of stories they tell, the types of stories they tell, and the frequency in which they can tell these stories. Mm-hmm. So, there's a lot of uncertainty. But the thing is like Dave says, what does he say in that quote? Well, at least he got Ezra home, which is really the main purpose of all this. So what, Ahsoka stranding her out there? I mean, you basically flip-flopped your one of your most popular characters for Ezra, who's always been a little weenie, let's face it. And you bring him back, but you leave Ahsoka out there. So nothing's been accomplished. And he says, well, at least I brought Ezra back, which was really like indicating that was a priority, which tells me that, yes, that confirms it. Ahsoka actually is season 5 of Star Wars Rebels. It's too high on its own supply, I think. They should have started fresh story with Ahsoka. Give us a story about what Ahsoka was doing during the original trilogy.
Yeah.
Fresh.
Right.
Keep it fresh. Who gives a crap if Ezra comes home?
Or what led her to find Morgan Elsbeth or something that would have potentially tied into some other things that those the great unwashed that have been following maybe Mandalorian and Kenobi or whatever might be able to relate to. Well, at the very least, I will say that it is great to have somebody as well thought out as Dave Filoni answering these questions. It gives us a lot of great fodder for talking here on RFR. So to have somebody of I don't want to say of equal, but of being in the same universe as the fans to talk about this stuff is really refreshing.
It's just like guys like Tony Gilroy. Okay, he's done a great job in Star Wars and stuff, but he's a hired hand. He doesn't give a crap about the history of Star Wars or what George Lucas thinks or what the fans think. Dave Filoni actually does.
Right.
Same thing with J.J. Abrams. Same thing with Rian Johnson. Same thing with Deborah Chow. Same thing with all of these guys they bring in. The guy who really cares is Dave Filoni. I mean, he still is one of us.
Yep.
But, that's where he comes from. And he comes from fandom and that's that. But, I like some of the insight he gives in these comments, and then I kind of cringe at the shortcuts and other things of that nature. I know he can do better. I know Lucasfilm can do better, and let's tighten it up and give us some quality storytelling, because all the proper pieces are there.
Yes,
creative wise, story wise, character wise.
They're so
the
close.
Casting is outstanding. I mean, there's so much upside to this. It's just like it just feels like everything is first draft and rushed, and there's no consideration giving to the coherency of the story. So well, that's you know what we gotta get into the cantina.
Let's
with the
do
guys.
it.
Star Wars Cantina.
Where are you going, Master? For a drink.
Sorry about the mess. You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
All right, as promised, joining us in the cantina, two of the powers behind A Disturbance in the Force, that documentary about the holiday special that we've been telling you about. Of course, Rebel Force Radio listeners know our good buddy Kyle Newman, but joining us, I think for the second time, is Jeremy Coon. He is the co-director of the documentary and a producer of a little-known film called Napoleon Dynamite. It is a little indie pick you might want to check out. So great to see you both here on Rebel Force Radio.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Jeremy, I say you might have been here before because I think we talked to you about the Raiders documentary that you did several years ago.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
It's been a while. It's a fun one.
Yeah, if you haven't checked it out, it's a documentary about the making of one of the first fan films, I think, ever. It was a shot-for-shot remake done by kids of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Jeremy, you told that story. So what made you decide to go from something like that to the Star Wars holiday special? How did you get looped in to this project?
I'm just slowly working my way through Lucasfilm's catalog of things they don't want to talk about. But it's
Tucker, A Man in His Dream, the documentary coming.
I was thinking more like Red Tails. I used to say Howard the Duck, and I found out someone's actually doing a Howard the Duck documentary. So I don't want to.
Oh my gosh. Wow. All right.
There's a fan base. There is a fan base.
Yeah.
I met a guy over the summer with a Howard the Duck tattoo from the film.
Really?
Film accurate tattoo. I was like, oh, you poor soul. But
and that's being ironic. He doesn't actually love it. He's just being like ironic hipster.
No. He was serious as a heart attack. I was hanging out with Todd Stashwick at the Chicago Comic-Con. And Leah Thompson came over, and we're talking to her, and all of a sudden this guy rolls up with a Howard the Duck tattoo. So Leah takes him and walks over to meet Michael J. Fox and all these people. It was crazy.
Wow.
Because on the other arm, he had the DeLorean. So he's a mega fan.
Either way, it's hardcore to get a tattoo of something if it's a joke.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, how did you get wrapped up in this movie?
Yeah, so I mean, I heard about the holiday special, and I saw it late. I saw it in like 2002, and didn't think it was real, and just kind of was around. And it's over time has become a really much, bigger pot of popular culture. But I happened to cross paths. So the co-director Steve Kozak, who I know has been on the show with you guys before, he called me up about something unrelated, and we were talking. Just kind of happenstance mentioned that he was thinking about doing a documentary on the holiday special, didn't really know how to go about it. Because his dad was Bob Hope's agent, and he kind of knew all these people that worked on these variety shows. So it just kind of started from there. And like I kept wanting to ask him. I just had a lot of questions, and to me, that's the genesis of every documentary project. Is I want answers. Those answers aren't provided, so we set out to make it. I was actually shocked that no one had done this before. Like I was convinced that someone had to at least have made an attempt. And there's other than like short YouTube videos, there's nothing else out there.
Right. Well, because obviously Lucasfilm has been trying to keep this thing on the down low for decades, but fandom won't put up with that, neither will the internet. So the holiday special lives on.
Are you surprised, Jeremy, though, that, given the fact that it has been, underground for the longest time, that now all of a sudden there's actual licensed merchandise, and you can go into the Disney park stores and get yourself a Life Day bathrobe and action figures and ornaments?
No, I mean, it's crazy that it's slowly leaked its way in. I mean, I assume if there's a way to make money on something, Lucasfilm and Disney are into it, and I think they're like dipping their toes in the Life Day waters because there's kind of like Life Day, but no one mentions where Life Day comes from. That's kind of the dividing line,
right?
But I mean, I think fans love it, and the fact that it's kind of this like annoying thing to Lucasfilm, or just they don't really want to talk about it, actually makes it more fun. So it's kind of propagating the same thing over. But it's a fun thing. It's a fun world to kind of live in and explore. So I mean, I'm all for it and supportive of it.
Yeah, and on top of it, I mean, there's a sense of authenticity with the whole concept of Life Day because essentially the concept itself comes from George Lucas.
Yeah, exactly.
And you guys talk about that in the film. As a matter of fact, there's even a reenactment from the Alan Dean Foster meeting where they were working on Splinter of the Mind's Eye, and George starts talking about Life Day. Am I remembering this correctly, Kyle? There was that reenactment.
Yeah, that section is the only time in the doc where we use a George Lucas recreation of his voice to narrate the actual text of what he said in that meeting. We were hoping to find a clip. We talked about using a potential actor to portray George, but it felt like the most effective thing was to just bring his words to life with an AI reading of it.
Oh, that was AI. Interesting.
Correct.
Yeah, I hired a couple of George Lucas AI interpreters on Fiverr, and that was the best one.
Oh, really?
It's like $30. It's scary. It's scary how good it is.
You got your George Lucas impersonator on Fiverr?
Yeah. Well, it was done through AI, so it's an AI. So it wasn't like a guy
I
doing
see.
So
the AI expert is the one. Okay, all right, that makes sense.
So he fed like 30 minutes of George Lucas from that time into whatever magic box he has, and then I think he recites it and it maps it on top of his on his voice. It's pretty. Yeah. It took him less than a day. It was crazy.
Wow. Scary. Well, I can't wait to see that particular clip. By the way, the film does come out. This was announced on Life Day. We had Kyle on the program when we talked about the big release. December 5th is the home release. That's on digital, but also, guys, there's a physical media release coming as well on the 5th, Blu-ray and DVD, correct?
Blu-ray and DVD. The Blu-ray is selling more than anticipated, so there might be a little bit of a lag on getting it, but it's definitely
I got my pre-order in.
Good job. It's I'm getting a lot of requests about it, but I think we'll be able to supply everything we need to.
It makes sense to me that people that are interested in this documentary are also people that are still buying physical media. They want to put this kind of thing on the shelf. They know they're never going to be able to put the holiday special on the shelf with their Star Wars films, but this documentary, they can do that.
Yeah, well, Blu-ray seems to be making a comeback. I just read the other day, like Oppenheimer is sold out, and they're trying to do everything they can to reduce. I mean, that's like a major film that's having a problem.
Wow,
so it's good.
Yeah. So, Jeremy, you were born. You're a little bit younger than I think all of us here. So you actually weren't born when the holiday special ran initially. When did you first become aware of it? I know you're a Star Wars fan going way back, but when did you first become aware that this thing even existed?
I think I heard rumors of it. It's the same thing as like the Raiders remake that the kids did, where you're kind of like, I could never find it, but I had people talk about it, and I didn't know. I just assumed it was an urban myth. But it was 2002. A friend gave me a bootleg DVD, and I'd made it like 20 minutes in. I'm just like, this isn't real. Like this is horrible. I can't.
You bailed.
There's no way. I was like, there's no. I thought it was a joke. I thought someone had this elaborate prank where they got elements from other Star Wars and kind of put it together, and then redid this. I just didn't. I didn't buy into it. And then I'd say something happened I guess it's the internet and YouTube. 2010, it definitely got way more into pop culture, where it was a lot more well known.
One of the reasons why it's got back into pop culture is because of what Lucasfilm's done. I mean, there was a Gentle Giant Boba Fett statue, in the 2006, 2007. Then you started to see, mentions of Life Day. There was a Lego Star Wars holiday special. They started to play with the term holiday special. Like you start to see like them talking about this again, and then you see it permeate the parks. You see it showing up in merchandising, Life Day, obviously Mandalorian Life Day mentions in the pilot. So it's almost like Lucasfilm has welcomed it back themselves. You know, you've got the Boba Fett Faithful Wookiee on Disney Plus. I remember when that dropped along with the other Disney animation. That was a very big deal. I think on the back of one of the Boba Fett cards, the action figure, they mention that the animated look was from the debut and the special. So there is this increase, as Jeremy mentioned earlier. Just not everyone knows exactly where it came from. And of course, the holy grail now is the Chewbacca Life Day red Snuggie with the glowing orb, vintage collection action figure in 3 3/4 scale. That thing is a thing of beauty, and it's amazing that it's come around. Because back when there was 20 figures, remember this? Back in the day, there was 20 action figures. I think the Cantina Alien Wave had come out, and not even maybe. There were these prototypes of Chewbacca's family that Kenner was going to make 3 3/4 inch. And we talk about that a bit in the documentary.
Yeah.
And those could have been the first foundational Star Wars action figures. Those could have been the first 24 figures out there, maybe the first 16 if they had done it, you know, or the first 15 if they put the 3 figures out there, the family. So it's interesting now. That was 1978, 79. Now we're looking at 2023, winter of 2023, basically, and they finally put out a Chewbacca holiday action figure 45 years later on the anniversary, you know? So
it's amazing.
Pretty incredible.
It's amazing. In the film, you guys do actually spotlight what appears to be some prototypes of the Wookiee family action figures from back in the vintage days. Whose collection did those come from? Are they legit?
Oh, yeah.
They're legit. Yeah, it's they live out in Seattle. If they want, it's I forgot their name.
Gus Lopez. Is it Gus?
Gus Lopez and Steve. They're in that syndicate of super collectors.
Yeah, right.
Lisa and
Vic Stevens.
Vic. Yeah, Lisa and Vic.
Lisa and Stevens. And they wrote a lot of early action figure stuff. I mean, they have a good archive online too. They have a lot of prototypes, and they are legit. And I think those are the only prototypes. Yep, that was an image from, I think, that surfaced in Tomart's action figures guide, maybe 143 or something like that. Back in the day, that's where I first saw them when I was buying action figure magazines.
Oh, yeah. Right. Back in the 90s is when these were revealed. I seem to remember that magazine myself. Something that comes up in the film that I thought was, I'm sorry, Jeremy, did you want to add on to that?
No, I was just saying, it's the only known that was ever made of that set. And I was gonna make a comment, I'm a big Star Wars fan, and I visited Gus Lopez and Vic and Lisa's house, and I'm like, I felt ashamed. I'm like, I'm not as hardcore as some fans.
Well, those guys have definitely dedicated a lot of time and effort into collecting everything worldwide.
Gus's Instagram, he's been showing a lot of his holiday special collectibles, his costumes.
I'll have to check that out.
It's like a legitimate museum. I mean, these people are historians. What Steve and Gus and Lisa and Nick do, this stuff will be lost to time, or we'd forget about it. We'd say, did that ever happen? You know, and they have it. And I think that's an important, preservation aspect of this. And like the holiday special itself, it could have just been forgotten,
Right.
We as fans keep this stuff alive. That's why we're still talking about a Star Wars holiday special. Because
absolutely.
All these other holiday specials, the good ones stay alive, but there were bad ones, that we don't watch the Wacky Wall Walkers holiday special or talk about it, I bet you don't even remember it
What
existed.
about Christmas Comes to Pac-Land, Kyle? Do you remember that one?
There's so many when you stop and think about it, and you're like, was that a fever dream? Did I ever see that? But here we are, still talking about, it's because, why are we talking about the Star Wars holiday special? Because Star Wars is still enduring. And I think that's it. That's why it's also under the same scrutiny it is.
Yeah, I wanted to, Jeremy, do you think that it deserves the reputation that it has?
My thing is, if you watched it when you were 5 or 10, you have a different relationship to it than when I saw it when I was 22 as an adult. It's a different context. So I kind of attribute, my first movie I remember seeing in the theaters, Return of the Jedi in '83. I can't tell you anything about see, I have no memories of seeing the movie, but I have this intense feeling of like happiness of sitting with my family and watching it in the front row because it was sold out. And I think that's carried with me through my life, like fandom of Star Wars. So I feel that's the same thing people have with the holiday special, is that kind of feeling. Is like it's the only time they could have gotten it other than the movie theater at the time. So I can relate to it as a child. If you're younger, it makes sense why you would be attached to it.
It suddenly occurred to me, I might be the only member of this conversation who actually tuned in to CBS that night in November 1978.
I was like two and a bit, and I was aware of it. And we went to my uncle's house, I think, for a Christmas thing or a Thanksgiving thing or some family thing. And I was really upset, I remember, because I couldn't watch it. And we saw a little bit on their TV, and then we drove home. And then when we got home, I was like so tired. I saw a little bit more of it, and I just went to bed. I crashed. But I remember I was so upset that they planned going to my uncle's house when there was the Star Wars thing on TV. But I don't really remember the experience of watching. I just remember being like let down. I remember there was like it was snowy outside. It was New Jersey. But then I forgot about it for 20 something years until I went to a New York Comic-Con. And at New York Comic-Con, I had to go to a Star Trek table to find the VHS. And the guy, it was almost like that scene from Fanboy Zone. The guy was trying to suss out Star Wars bitches, and he had a VHS tape under the table of the special. And he's like, "Oh, you're into Star Wars? I got something for you." And he pulled out this bootleg VHS. And so I'd forgotten about it totally.
Yeah, it was very forgettable, actually. I remember watching it when I was 9 years old, saying to myself, something's a little off here. And and what made it even worse was at first the word on the streets was that Star Wars was going to be on TV. So I got my hopes up for that. And then somebody said, no, it's Star Wars 2. It's going to be a whole different thing.
Oh, no.
And so I had my hopes up for that. Then I think I eventually got, grasp of the whole concept of the holiday special. But as I was watching it all unfolded, so, to my 9-year-old brain, something seemed very off about the proceedings. And it was unfortunate because this was about 6 months prior to my family getting our first VHS. And so I couldn't record it. And it just was something that was kind of locked into my memory, fleeting memories.
Jim, you could have been the guy. You could have been one of those early pioneers to leak this thing. 6 months.
You would have had a gem copy, too. You probably would have had a good copy.
Oh, and Jimmy Mack, it would have been great. Yeah.
Some of those VHS tapes from that era do still exist at my brother's house. So, who knows what kind of nuggets he might actually have. But definitely we missed the holiday special. And so there were just like little memories I had. I remember the animation. And I remember, oddly, I remember the part where the stormtroopers ransack the Wookiee house and they behead the Bantha. And then little Lumpy goes up into his bedroom and he takes the body of the headless Bantha, puts it on the bed, places the head on it by the pillow, and then puts a blanket over it. And I still, just hearing myself describe that scene, I feel tugs on the heartstrings. It was so touching for a little Lumpy.
That Lumpy. He's a regular tiny Tim. Do you know something? I swear in Andor, season 1, they're in Andor's stepmom's apartment, right?
It's episode 2.
Swear there's a holiday special, one of the toys. I got to go back and find this. I think I messaged you, Jeremy, when I was watching it.
No, it's in episode 2. It's there, and they acknowledged it, but it was like I want to put it in the doc, but it took way too long to explain.
It was there. It was a holiday special toy.
Wait. Was it an in-universe thing, like Lumpy's?
Yeah, like an in-universe
Lumpy's toy Bantha. It wasn't like a Nala action figure.
It might have been the X-Wing.
Decapitated Bantha is going to be the name of my punk band I've always wanted to form.
You got to sell those at Galaxy's Edge in that little artisanal like gift section, where it's all the homemade stuff, and you can like rip its head off and Velcro it back.
Hey, you're barking up a tree. I bet that's going to be in the Star Wars Celebration store at the next big con.
Did you guys know?
God.
Okay, so check this out. In Aftermath, I think it's in Aftermath, right? Chewbacca, they acknowledged Chewbacca's son, but they renamed him Waru, right? Is that what happened?
Oh, I seem to remember that. Yeah, they renamed him.
Deplorable of a name. They're like, we can't do this. This is horrible.
How dare they?
Like gravy, lumpy gravy. Like, get it out of here. But Chuck Wendig came back. I think it was Chuck, and created Waru. Waroo, maybe.
What you're saying that Lumpy was too lame for Chuck Wendig?
Yep.
Okay.
Could that guy have made more of the wrong decisions?
You got to get rid of Lumpy,
Could that guy have made more of the wrong decisions when he got his chance to play in the Star Wars sandbox?
A poor peddling jester in Theed City Square. Remember that? Just Jar Jar Senator was panhandling.
I think that led to a 45-minute phone call from you, Kyle. I was just like totally distraught. I was trying to talk you down for 45 minutes.
I'll be honest, the Aftermath series, some people say Star Wars ruined their childhood. The Aftermath series ruined my adulthood.
Wow. It gave me a bad taste in my mouth, and that's all I'm going to let it do. I'm not going to let it have power over me. I'll show those books. Well, there was a lot of great things that were revealed in the documentary that really, they were revelations to me. The notion that there was a script tucked away somewhere in Ralph McQuarrie's house that was found after he passed away, a script for the holiday special that may have been penned by George Lucas himself.
Yeah, it's funny because we researched everything, but like the Star Wars archive book claims that Lenny Rips and Pat Proft wrote that, and they vehemently deny they have anything to do with that. They said they were given that by Lucas, and like the archive is wrong. But Kyle talks about in the documentary. It feels very like Lucas wrote it. It's like feels like something he would write.
Well, was it written on legal pads and number 2 pencil? I mean, that's the dead giveaway.
No, I think it was actually typed out.
Oh, it was typed. Oh, okay. So
yeah.
I think though, here's the deal. When was the archive book published? What year was that?
A few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think I read something recently, even since we finished the doc, that was something like Lucas's assistant typed something up, or someone present in the meeting. So that's why it's not on the yellow lined paper. It's all typed. But conceptually, my analysis is, and from talking to people, it feels like it's birthed from the mind of George.
Well, he even has casting suggestions in there. A name that jumps out is Raquel Welch. George wanted her in this.
So Star Wars, right, Jimmy? So Star Wars.
Well, don't knock it till you try it. I mean, I'd be willing to see Raquel Welch run around with those space buns on the side of her head and her real buns too. While we're at it,
that seems like very real George casting. Raquel Welch. That just rings true to me somehow.
It's something else I didn't realize, and I hope you guys can expand on this a little bit because you don't really delve too deep into it in the documentary itself. But there was the idea, speaking of casting, that Cher would be performing the song, not Diane Carroll or Diane Cannon. Wait, Diane Carroll. That's right.
Carroll, you're right.
Yeah, I got it right the first time. This is not the lady who starred in The Godfather. It's Diane Carroll. Was that just wish list stuff, or was there an offer made to Cher to actually appear?
My understanding, when we talked to Bob Mackey, the dress was designed for Cher. And then we don't know. No one knows why she dropped out. I don't think it's because my guess is it was a scheduling thing. I don't think she was like, "Oh, this is a disaster. I can't be a part of it." I think she just had a scheduling issue, and then Diane Carroll stepped in because she was the same size. And
Diane Bruce was a late addition. She was a late cast addition, so it wasn't. All that points to the fact that she was replacing somebody.
Yeah.
Okay, and for the record, it was Diane Keaton in Godfather, not Diane Carroll, nor Diane Cannon. Okay, That's just for my own mental
Get your
health
Diane.
to say
So
that.
the idea of sharing
Bob
Noga would be awesome.
Diane Noga.
Dianoga. There you go. Taking it right back to in universe.
Did Mackie just do the gown for the performer, or did he do other costume work for the piece?
He did everything that wasn't like a Star Wars thing for the movie. So like any of the characters and stuff, but like anything people are wearing that's not from like a Star Wars movie. So like he didn't do like Han Solo and like Luke and all that stuff, but everything else he did.
Like our Carney.
He talks about, the acrobat performers and trying to how to create like this almost alien leotard that they had to slip into to give the essence of Star Wars and extraterrestrial and weird, but still have it be functionable for dancers to have to do flips and, tower up. And that's some of the more fascinating stuff, speaking to the dance troupe and getting into those elements and realizing there's a legacy to the family that was the dance troupe. And her father was one of the guys who did Thief of Baghdad. And there's these parallels to like what George was doing in that with the Jared-esque dance, hologram dance sequence. Bob Mackey's stuff, it's fascinating. Like he was like, you know what, these movies are stark and neutrals, and I want to go do an explosion of color. And he got to go play in that way. And nobody said don't do it, Bob Mackie. They welcomed it, and they just let a guy who was at the height of his powers, he was famous, costumer, go and create this. And another great costume story was Pete Sears talking about they just kind of unleashed Jefferson Starship in a room and said, go dress yourself. It's kind of like when you're at like some corporate event and they have like the photo booth kind of thing, and there's all these hats and glasses and costumes to dress up in, and they just said Jefferson Starship, go dress like you're in outer space. So it's not like anyone was personally dressing Jefferson Starship. They just walked into a room and grabbed some frilly stuff and popped it on. And
I think that's very much in your colleague Steve Kozak could probably back this up. I think that was very much the model of how these variety shows were done. It was kind of like show up, here's your wardrobe options, find something that fits, something that you like, and come on out. It was really really amazing. And I think the thing that you mentioned earlier, I think, Jeremy, you said something about context as a kid, and that's what I think this documentary does so well, better than anything. It's just it gives this thing context, because when you have that historical context, knowing that this was the prevailing format for television at that time, yeah, it's still weird, but it's a little less weird.
Yeah, I mean, looking back on it, it's actually more. It would be more weird if they didn't do it, because that's what they do with everything that was successful or had notoriety. Got a TV special or a variety special, and yeah, Kyle said earlier, but for Star Wars, we wouldn't be talking about this 45 years later, because even the other things we talked about in the film, like the Paul Lynde Halloween special and Brady Bunch Variety Hour and stuff, it still talks about it, but it doesn't have. It's on a whole different level than Star Wars Holiday Special.
Yeah. You guys also
biggest thing for us. Sorry, I want to say and one of the best things about this is sitting with J.W. Rensler as his last.
Oh my God, it was so great to see Jonathan in this. I can't even tell you. I cheered.
Amazing lessons in context and art, and I think he's the one who really puts it into focus, the whole experience, because. If you go click on Watch the Holiday Special and you're going to go watch this on YouTube, which I recommend you do not do that yet if you haven't seen it, watch this first. I'd say get the context, arm yourself with information about it. You're going to get a lot more out of that 2-hour experience than if you just watch it cold on your laptop or something. I think you need to understand the landscape of late 70s television, vaudeville, variety, goofiness. It was a grab bag. Everything and anything goes, trying to appeal to everyone. And Star Wars did not invent the variety format. It just was plugged into it. And I think you need that foundational understanding of late 70s, and also the unique place Star Wars was in. It was an unquantifiable success. It was meteoric success, but no one knows what it could be. Could it sustain? And it was in that very unique sliver of time when George was paying attention to American Graffiti 2, and he's paying attention to Empire Strikes Back, and he's paying attention to how do I merchandise this movie, and he's paying attention to moving his company, and he's bringing on Irvin Kershner, and they're developing, he's putting all his money into this stuff, and yet this thing's happening, and he can't control it. It's like a snowball going down down a hill and it just gets out of control. And Seth Green has great commentary on George's POV on trying to undo it. But you have to just understand what was going on with Lucasfilm and Star Wars and the zeitgeist, and then understand television at the time. And you put that all together and then you go, oh, I get it. So nobody was really like a bad person doing this. That's what we really try to absolve people of guilt, you know? No, George is not responsible. No one's responsible. No one got fired from it. It's just, it happened, and this stuff happened back then. And Star Wars, so we're still talking about it. That's it.
Yeah, Jonathan Rinsler really puts it in perspective in his very down-to-earth, straightforward, and pragmatic way, where he says, you know, hey, it was what it was. It was part of the era. It was something that George couldn't really maintain. He was so busy, and you know, it's not easy making films. It's not easy making shows, and there were just a revolving door of creatives involved in this thing, and the Lucasfilm creatives that were involved in it fell off throughout the production of this thing, to where they hired a director, Steve Binder, who did the Elvis special from '68, and he had a great resume, but then he ended up leaving the production, so it was just left to some variety show producers. And what I find so interesting about the documentary is you talk to Mickey Herman, who is an executive at Lucasfilm, who ended up becoming the point person for Lucasfilm during the production of this film, and Mickey talks about it as if she had like no control of the situation whatsoever. And she said they left it to the variety show producers. And then she just shrugs. And I'm yelling at the screen from my seat. You left it to the variety show producers. You were the point person. Why did you let that happen? George trusted this person. Mickey Herman.
It's exactly the reaction we wanted. Because I've never put it in here because I actually kind of feel she's the one that gets blamed. But I don't want to just come out and be like she's the villain. But yeah, she doesn't take any ownership at all. It's just like
it just seems like she threw her hands up in the air and said, "All right, variety show producers, run wild with George Lucas's creation."
And then those producers admit they've never edited before. They didn't even know the process of editing, the medium of editing, and they have to edit this special. And then you've got like Smith and Hemian, these like legendary producers that were on it in name only. Then one went back to them and said, "Hey, your name's on it, or whatever. Give notes on a cut." It was just like everyone just moved on.
So the fact that it never aired again, was that George's say? Did he retain ownership of this thing? I've always wondered exactly who owned it and how could he have prevented it. You would think that people would be like, hey, this is a cash, this is, especially as it grew in infamy, that they would just keep running it. How did he prevent that?
I'm not sure who owned it. I know in like '87 there was like an event, like he did something to basically make sure Lucasfilm had the copyright to it, and he bought something to make sure that he had it. Then because they did like a showing at the Library of Congress to keep the copyright alive and do something with it. But what's funny is like I found out just a month ago, the special aired like 6 times in Australia.
No,
in like
kidding.
Different parts of the country. I don't know if it aired
year
legally.
or in subsequent
years. Like 78 to like 83 or 84. Like it aired over like. My guess is in Australia it's probably a little bit looser and it wasn't an official.
Right, and it could be where some of those better bootlegs came from if they were still broadcasting that into the early 80s. Wow, that's fascinating.
Commercials indicate that, right? The commercials that it aired with, because it probably had local. I would love to see an Australian. You're right. 1979, Jason. What was the conversation? Like, it's like August. They're getting their holiday slate together. And like, George, we're going to air this again. He's like, no, you're not. Forget it. Yeah, no. Put it down. What was going on there? You're right. Like, he did. There was a clip that Jeremy had found. When was it, Jeremy? 1987 at the 10-year anniversary.
87. It's the 10th anniversary for like Starlog of Star Wars. He's doing a Q&A. But afterwards someone asked him, they refer to it as the Wookiee TV movie or something. And Lucas says, it will ever be released. And Lucas is like, yeah, it'll be released on video one day, is what he says. So it's him on tape admitting that he, at some point, anticipated it coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then he just couldn't live with himself for letting it happen in the first place, so he decided to bury it as best as he could. But fandom and the internet will not take no for an answer, and this thing is alive and thriving now more than I ever thought it did when I first got my bootleg video back in the mid-'90s. And it was complete with all those commercials too, fighting the fizzies at 10, or and or the commercial where the kid, and I love this technology. They put a little toy van on a piece of paper, and a kid takes a crayon, and the van follows the trail of the crayon as he's drawing it. Do you guys remember that commercial? It's on my bootleg.
Wow.
Is it the Frizzies? Is it the New York feed? One of the Frizzies?
I don't know which one. I think I have a Cincinnati bootleg, actually.
Okay.
So I don't know if I have the Frizzies one. It's been a while since I fired up the old VCR.
Oh my God, there probably are collectors that try to amass all of them. It's unbelievable. What do you guys hope the takeaway is for fans? What do you hope to add or conclude to this conversation about the Star Wars Holiday Special? Because it's unlikely that you'll be the final word in this as this thing just continues to grow, but you've made a huge contribution to the conversation. But what would you like people to take away from it?
I just want people to we want people to have a good time, like to have a laugh. It's kind of like, it's fun to go back to a more simple time and just live in that 70s variety world for a while. And that's kind of just really comforting. So, I mean, to me, that's the first takeaway, but it's also just, I kind of view this as looking at like Star Wars, like junior high yearbook. Like no one was cool in high school. This is really awkward time of adolescence.
It had acne.
Star Wars. Yeah, and it's kind of like you're looking at this and you're like, yeah, this is embarrassing. You can't just hide this. It's not pretend like it didn't happen. You should actually like embrace it and be like, yeah, look how far it's come since then. Like I had this misstep, but it made total sense why it happened at the time when it happened.
That's a really great way to look at it, Jeremy, because when you think about that, like, even when you're in college, you're still not ready to look at those dorky junior high pictures yet. But the older you get, the more you can look at it. You're like, yeah, I earned all of this. And so maybe it is just a matter of time before this thing is fully accepted, warts and all. So you've given me hope that maybe, like our dorky junior high pictures, we'll see an official release someday. Unless that's in George's contract with Disney, who knows?
Here's what I think. The biggest thing with this doc is it's fun. It's funny. It's funnier than a lot of movies that are out there. You know what I mean? I watch this thing. Every time I watch it, I am laughing. There's a lot of just great laughs in it. And we want to entertain. And the doc space, what I'm so proud of Jeremy and Steve for creating. The doc space, it's really dark. It's cynical. There's so much overproduction. Everything's like a murder. Oh, did someone die in it? Oh, no one died? Oh, did a war happen? We can't make this doc. It's not interesting. No one died. Where's the murder? What happened to just like telling a good story and chronicling a piece of time that you didn't understand anything about? And there's a lot of Star Wars fans, I think, that their mind's going to be blown, and they're going to be seeing things they've never seen before, even if it's not the holiday special. It's curios from an era that is forgotten and buried. These actors marketing the film in different ways, and seeing Gary Kurtz and Mark Hamill and Charlie Lippincott, 1976, going out and talking about the film. Like, it's not just the holiday special. This is for just people curious about early Lucasfilm, early Star Wars days. I think it speaks to that, but it is most importantly fun. And I think that's what we want to do. That's why there's so many wonderful people in the doc, from Kevin Smith to Seth Green to Patton Oswalt to Weird Al. It's like loaded with fun people. And like I said, no one's everyone's had their shots at the holiday special. Everyone's made fun of it. Everyone's reduced it to the butt of a joke, but there's a lot more to it than that. And I think that's what we bring to it in 90 minutes. And I think these guys did such a great job putting this together. Yeah. And that's it. And I think that there's maybe not much more to say after that. I think if you're going to watch the holiday special, if you haven't, just watch this first. I really not from any bias because we made this movie. I'm just like, if I was going to introduce my kids to it, I'd be like, hold on.
Brace yourselves with this.
And it's like, there's an innocence to the movie, you know. There's just a straightforwardness. There's an innocence. There's no.
Yeah, you're not trying to hurt anybody or get snarky or anything with this.
There's no angle, though. You know, a lot of docs come in and they already have an angle. They're like, "This is it. We're going to take down this person in the end of season 1, episode 7 out of 8. You're going to decompress it so much. We're going to do this flip," and you're just like, it's all overdone. It's all. I watched this one doc the other day, and it was 80% of it was like recreations. It was like, what am I watching? Like, document this. Stop recreating it with actors. It's just too much.
Yeah.
And so I like that these people, these old timers, come on camera, and they just bare their souls. They're honest. They're not like trying to hurt anybody. They're not apologizing for anything. They were in a comfortable space, and they come and they tell an honest story. And it's unfortunate that maybe this isn't talked about more, but these, you know, big brands and corporations, they move on. They're not going to keep looking back to the past unless it's in a very bite-sized and consumable way that also speaks to new content. And this doesn't speak to any new content, you know? So this is just a sliver of the past in an era long forgotten.
It's great. It does something to preserve the holiday special as well as the Donnie and Marie Star Wars show that they did. And you have great interviews with Donnie. And there's a great quote in the documentary. The Star Wars holiday special is like Citizen Kane compared to Donnie and Marie. That got a big laugh in the theater I was in last night. And it was really a laugh. Another line that got a big laugh was the guy, I think he was somebody from the production crew of the actual holiday special. He referred to it a Life Day as a Wookiee Rosh Hashanah. That got a big laugh in the theater I was in, too.
Yeah.
You guys did just a fantastic job with this. Great to see Jonathan Rinsler. Great to see Gilbert Gottfried. You know, God bless those guys. They left us after they did interviews with you guys. And so it's wonderful to be getting fresh content from those two wonderful people. And you guys are wonderful people for taking this on and making the holiday special something that we can actually look back at fondly. Because there's been times when looking back at it, it hasn't always been such a fond experience, you know.
Well, we can thank you guys for doing that interview with Charlie Lippincott, because like he passed away before we could interview him, and that was like a huge get to have that asset.
Yeah, thank you for including it too. It was great to see Rebel Force Radio up on the silver screen, because that doesn't happen too often. But you know, we're doing what we can to preserve the history of Star Wars here on our show. And I nerded out. I took a photo of the screen when you guys were playing the interview clip. Yeah, Charlie didn't do hardly any interviews, and I think we did the only audio interview with him, which is strange. Maybe he did a couple quick little video shots here and there, but he was a pretty reclusive guy. He had chips on his shoulder too that were huge, but I don't get into all that.
We tried to get him, and he was just kind of like, depending on the day and what mood he was in, it was sometimes difficult. We'd kind of cool off and go back. That's why. But his Facebook, Kyle was saying his Facebook was just a gold mine for information. Yeah. He had so much stuff on it.
I hope that was somehow preserved through the Wayback Machine or screen captures, that somebody got that, because it was a gold mine.
Yeah.
I wonder if it was a lot of that was also he was then asked to take it down. I don't know that whole. I have to go back and look at that, but there was a tremendous archive of stuff just spilling forth that people were like, wait, what? Are you allowed to post all this stuff?
Like the meeting with Lucas where he gets angry and kind of like we talked about how he did the holiday special out of spite. That's straight from his Facebook feed, and like, because he had a note. We didn't know who the executive was, and once we found out it was Frank Wells, it put everything together, because it's like Frank Wells he had a bad blood with, because we didn't get into it too much in the doc, but he basically recut THX 1138. And so he already, like, Lucas and him already didn't like each other. And when he came in and said, like, you're going to be gone by Labor Day, this, Star Wars is going to be a bust after this. You need to do something else. It makes sense why he was so furious after that. But that's strictly from, like, a note that his wife had, like, written something down when he was giving dictation, and he just posted that. They posted that on Facebook.
And you know what? Lucas had my back with fanboys because of the way Frank Wells manhandled, like you said, THX. Like the fact that somebody takes your movie and cuts it up, and then when Weinstein Company was trying to like change my film, like he was like, no, I support Kyle's cut. It was like he had power there to protect. But yeah, these studios don't care. And then Frank Wells, as soon as Star Wars is a success, was like, oh, I'm going to put your movie back out because idiots are into sci-fi, like suckers, like it's horrible that some of the people that you have to deal with. And I think George, you see through this is the other rewarding thing was you get a little bit of an understanding of the psychology of George through this whole process, and probably why the holiday special was formative for him in learning how to protect his baby, Star Wars. This got bigger than just a movie. So, and who you let come play with it and how you let them play with it is very key. And that's why you see him being so hands-on moving forward, even recutting, Return of the Jedi and all these things, not letting anyone exploit the brand while he took a break from it until it came back in 1999. He could have just said, sure, go make money, go do it, but holiday specials experience was like, no. You can't let anybody play with this unless it's like you're supervising. And he wasn't supervising. And I think that, informs him as an artist too, this experience. I think it's more than just a holiday special. I mean, that's why I watched it, every time I watch it, I laugh, I learn something, but I think that's what I take away more than just, it's about the holiday special. It's really about the people. It's really about Star Wars, the identity of Star Wars. And it's good for all ages. It's not like this is like, you have to be an adult. You have to be from this era to get something out of it.
Yeah. I got to throw this in because this just happened actually, it was this summer when you were talking about for all ages. So, Jeremy, I know that you are one of the masterminds behind Napoleon Dynamite. Let me just tell you how much fun I had showing that to my kids this summer. I have an 11-year-old and a 15, okay. 11 and 15. And I'm not a prude, and they watch all kinds of stuff, but to be able to sit and watch something that we were belly laughing and not have to worry about it being dirty or, overtly, suggestive or anything like that. There's not enough really quality content to bring parents and kids together. And so anyway, your film continues to do that. So thank you for that moment.
Thanks so much. That's great to hear. Yeah, it's we did a 15th anniversary. We had like kids who were like 8 asking us questions, and they were actually the hardest questions because they're things that we had never even thought about. One was like, how did LaFonda get on the horse at the wedding? And I'm like, I don't remember. I have no memory at all, like how we did it.
That's awesome. Well, we have some questions for you. We want to let you guys go. But before we do, Jeremy, we're not letting you leave. And Kyle, you can be a witness to this. We can't let you leave until we do a little tradition here we have. And we don't do this for every guest, but special guests, we will do it. We're in receipt of some very important questions that we got from the Jedi Master Yoda himself. Okay. They were faxed to us because, it's Dagobah and technology isn't quite advanced there. The great thing about these questions is that there are no wrong answers, though there are answers that are more right than others. Okay. So without further ado, we would like
to... Is this?
No, it's not a test.
Okay.
But you will be judged.
Yeah, I was saying there's no wrong answers, but there are shameful answers.
That's right. All right, so let's kick it off here. Mr. Richard Cheese.
The Yoda questionnaire.
All right. That is the real Richard Cheese, by the way. Okay. Jeremy Coon, you're on the hot seat here. First question from the Jedi Master himself. Who or what is your favorite Star Wars character? Who or what? We've got to be inclusive here. So it's not just the who's, it's the what.
It's Han Solo.
Han Solo, no hesitation. He right out the gate. Okay.
Why Han Solo?
Is there someone cooler than Han? I mean, like everything about him is great. I love Harrison Ford as an actor. I think he's the funniest thing in most of the films that he's been in, like the earlier ones. Like that's where most of the and like my favorite line in all the series. This is a little bit cheesy, but like when he says, "I know" to Leia, that's like the coolest thing ever. I think like that's the That's one of my favorite moments in all the trilogy.
Jeremy, have you seen the Yoda questionnaire before? Because you just answered question number 3 with question number 1. So it's good.
Is that my favorite line or favorite part?
Favorite line. Favorite line was. Okay, well, if that's the case, then we can flip over to the dark side. All right, that was trip to the light side. Here's the dark side.
I passed that. Did I?
You passed. Yeah, you passed.
Yeah, a lot of people say Han Solo, and catch me on certain days of the week. I would agree with you 100%. But today, my favorite character is Bosk. So what are you going to do?
It changes. It changes daily. Who or what is your least favorite character, Jeremy? Your least favorite?
Man, let's see.
I hope he doesn't say Bosk.
No, I mean, I might say, again, this is another like easy answer, but I mean, Jar Jar Binks, I was not a fan of when the prequels came out.
And time has not changed that for you? That's still...
No, I haven't. I feel bad. I need to revisit. I haven't revisited the prequels. I have a 6-year-old, and I'm kind of like, maybe we watched the original trilogy, and like he loved all that, but I just haven't gotten to like the prequels yet. I think I have to go Jar Jar Binks because like I think it was so ingrained in me when that came out in '99 that I was so angry that it just never went away.
Wow. Well, I highly recommend you give them another chance, especially with you got a 6-year-old. So that's a great opportunity to see them through. Is it a little boy or a little girl?
Little boy.
Little boy. You can see it through his eyes. Yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. That's your homework for the holidays. So we talked about your favorite line. You mentioned that it's the "I know" from the Empire Strikes Back scene. What is your least favorite line? Is there a line of dialogue that just makes you cringe every time you hear it?
Oh, crap. It has to be something between Hayden Christensen and what's part where they're doing like their courtship. There's something in that's like horrible. It's just flat dialogue. Like all of it's bad.
Are you saying any line between Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman in the prequels is your least favorite?
That's what I would say. I can't pinpoint one, but it's something. I'll limit it to the Phantom Menace. Somewhere in there, their interactions are not good.
No, you can't say that because Phantom Menace, Hayden Christensen isn't even in that film.
Can I pitch you?
No, I mean, never mind.
Attack of the Clones.
Attack of the Clones.
All right, Kyle wants to say something because there's been too much prequel hate and he can't hold still.
What about I don't care what galaxy you're from, that's gotta hurt. That's pretty bad.
From the pod race announcer?
Beside himself is pretty bad. And maybe the worst is no need to report that until there's something to report.
So there's something to report.
That's my least favorite.
Kyle, I never heard you break bad on the prequels before. This is a different thing for you.
I always say the prequels are amazing, but give me one weekend and I can cut 2 minutes and they'll be better.
All right, Jeremy, I got one more question for you, okay? And I'm going to change this around. You're not an actor. You're more of a behind-the-scenes guy, so I'm going to switch this around. Normally, we're talking to actors here. So if there was another Star Wars movie to be made, and you were directing it, and George Lucas was the executive producer, and he's right there on the set with you, what would you like to hear him say to you, Jeremy Coon, as you say cut on the final scene? It's a wrap.
Faster and more intensity. I know that's his line he told the actors. I mean, other than just the pattern, man, I've never thought about this. I mean, I'd probably just something where just like good job or
Yeah, you're not going to get much out of George.
No, right? I mean, other than him saying like that. I mean, the best you could probably get is like "that'll do" is probably like the compliment.
That'll do. That'll do.
I like that you gave a very realistic answer. You didn't delude yourself that he was going to say, "Oh, that was amazing. That was great."
I would rather him say something negative than just nothing. The worst thing that could happen is just silence.
Oh, right.
Some people have said those.
Nothing. He says nothing, but then he goes, "Want to go to Olive Garden later? Maybe just maybe like,
a burger." He's more of a Taco Bell fan. This is something we found out. We talked to the animator when they did the the animation scene, the holiday special, George took him to Taco Bell to talk about it. And that's where they made the decision that they were going to hire them as the animators. Just so funny to me.
That's where some of the most important decisions in Hollywood gets made. I mean, at the Taco Bell, of course, over a chalupa.
All right. Well, Kyle Newman and Jeremy Coon, great talking to you both. Congratulations on the documentary. It's great. I might be a little upset if my Blu-ray is delayed, but I'm happy for you guys nonetheless. December 5th is the release date. And so it'll be available on all of the outlets, like on iTunes, on Amazon, and these were the ones.
Vudu, Google Play. That's the initial launch. I think we'll add more as they go on, but that's like 90% of like what everyone uses.
And that's where you can pay a few bucks, rent it and watch it, or you can buy it digitally. And then if you want a physical copy, it's going to be available on DVD and Blu-ray. You can get that at Amazon or wherever physical media is sold. Guys, thanks a lot. Happy holidays to both of you. Thanks for bringing the spirit of the holidays to us and the holiday special. Kyle,
Happy Life Day.
They're both decked out.
They're both showing off their Star Wars Christmas sweaters. Well, you guys are fashion plates.
You know, I'm all holiday special revved up still. I think I was on some Etsy site and there's an Acmina action figure custom. There's like Gourmanda. There's like all the Harvey Korman characters. They're not painted, but they're the 3 3/4 inch. They look great.
You need something to do. Imagine Kyle just sitting in there with a little paintbrush and a lot of patience.
I'm not
there
doing
painting his.
I'm not doing it, but I want to. I want to get them painted. You know, just like if you're going to make them, take the extra effort and paint them. You know.
Come on, you lazy Etsy people out there with your unpainted custom action figures.
But I do think we should make cards of, you know, the Charlie Lippincott card. Like it'd be cool if there was like set of cards from the people who made the special. There it is.
Yeah.
Hey, Kyle, you were very good in this as well. Kyle is featured as a talking head throughout the documentary, and yeah, you do a fantastic job.
I look.
It was so meta. I was at the theater yesterday watching you on screen, and you started texting me while I was like, "Oh, this is crazy." Too meta. There you are.
Yeah,
up on screen. Look at you pontificating over something. You know, I can tell you're just about ready to say the word zeitgeist. I can tell. I can just tell by looking at you.
Fellas, thank you both so much. Appreciate it once again. Happy holidays to you all. And however you celebrate, enjoy it.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
Care.
Appreciate it.
All right. Anytime.
Take it easy.
Anytime. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Great to talk to those guys about the holiday special documentary, A Disturbance in the Force, available not that long. You know, they've got some real competition, Jim, on December 5th. There's a lot of Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny hits home video that same day. You got the big anniversary release of James Cameron's Titanic is hitting. Look at him. Look at that look he just gave. If you people don't realize, if you're not a all access member on Patreon, you'll never see the looks, the smirks that I get from Jimmy Mack when I say.
I don't think either of those are going to move the needle compared to A Disturbance in the Force. This is fresh new content.
That's right.
However, a lot of people did stay home for that last Indiana Jones movie, so I wouldn't be surprised if that gets a little bit of movement there on the streaming services. Titanic, I mean, how many times can you see that movie? Geez, it's been around forever. It's on TV all the time. But A Disturbance in the Force, that's fresh.
I was flipping around on, I saw CMT, Country Music Television. Mm-hmm. They're running a Titanic marathon. Like on all channels? Yeah, like they replay it like 3 times in a row. On Country Music Television? Come on, give me my Dukes of Hazzard reruns. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, really.
CMT.
Chewie, get us out of here!
All right, that's going to wrap things up for us this week. Appreciate you all being here, and joining us once again for Rebel Force Radio. And huge thanks to Jeremy Coon and Kyle Newman for being with us in the Cantina. Make sure you check out A Disturbance in the Force, coming to a streaming service near you, or if you're a physical media person, you can check it out, get a Blu-ray or a DVD copy. I'm really anxious to go back and watch it. I was, as you were, Jim, privileged to see an early cut. Now, you just saw the most recent version in the theaters, so I'm really anxious to see this finished product. Unfortunately, It wasn't screening anywhere near me, so I wasn't able to see it.
There's been a lot of changes since the cut we saw, including the inclusion of Kyle himself, Patton Oswalt, Steve Sansweet. Just really great. And, more polished as far as the editing. And oh, by the way, Jeremy Coon did all the editing for this. He did a fantastic job with this documentary. It really flows. I meant to mention that to him. I'll have to send a message via Kyle back to Jeremy to tell him I thought the editing was outstanding. So great documentary. You guys will really enjoy it. You will too, Jason. Be sure to stream it.
It's a heck of a way to spend a couple hours over the holidays as they come upon us here. More Rebel Force Radio can always be heard and found at our Patreon, patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio. You can find it by going right to Patreon, or you can go to rebelforceradio.com and click on the Patreon ad there in the right rail. There you will find weekly full show video. So the show that you're listening to right now via podcast is available as a video. You hear us making references to things that we're showing on the screen. You can see all of that, as well as our faces, if you are an All Access or above member. So check that out. Also, exclusive podcasts, audio podcasts you can't find anywhere else. And some of those actually have full show video as well. But those are available. A buck gets you in the door, a buck, and you're listening to those exclusive podcasts. You're not going to find them on Spotify. You're not going to find them on Apple Podcasts. You're not going to find them on the RFR podcast feed. They're only available through Patreon, and it is a great community of Star Wars fans. You've heard them on many of our Rebel Force Radio after shows, including our Patreon-only call-in show we had a couple of weeks ago. Great folks and great conversation always happening at Patreon, so please support us over there. You can also watch us on YouTube. YouTube has really become a great way to sort of bone up on your RFR. There's so much Rebel Force Radio history, interviews, old episodes, you name it. It's all there at YouTube. One request that we have is that when you're watching some of those videos, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. It's great to leave a comment. YouTube really cares about that, so please do that. Also, follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And guess what? We're back on Twitter.
Oh, my God.
Mac and I we figured it out. We got our Twitter, or X, I guess we should say, account unlocked. So we're there at RFR Rebel Force. Rebel Force Radio everywhere else, but on X, RFR Rebel Force, as well as Facebook and Instagram. Don't forget about that official Rebel Force Radio group. You just got to answer a couple of questions. Just search for it, Rebel Force Radio group, and just to prove that you are an RFR listener, and we'll let you in. And it's another great place to hang out with other Star Wars fans. The website for all things and everything Rebel Force Radio is rebelforceradio.com. But if you really want to help us out, the best thing you can do, and it costs you nothing, is just do what you're doing right now. Listen to the podcast. Recommend it to your friends and family. If as you're getting together over the holidays and you're talking about Star Wars, say, hey, I have this great podcast. Why don't you listen to it? Rebel Force Radio. Check it out. It helps us grow. We'd love to have you subscribe via your podcatcher of choice. We'd love to have you leave us a review. If you can, one simple rule, please, on those reviews.
Make them good.
All right, that'll do it. We'll see you next week for more Rebel Force Radio. Great to be back. We'll see you next time. But until then, for Rebel Force Radio, I'm Jason.
And I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
the Force will be with you, always.
Well, you got stationery? Jimmy Mack's got official RFR stationery. That's so cool. I love it.
Thanks, Mom.
Oh, Mom.
Yeah.
That's great. I need some of that. See you next time.
Luke was on the Wookiee home planet Kashyyyk in the holiday special when he helped Chewie get home to his wife.
Chewie had a wife?